Manager, Community Development Director, City Clerk? Okay. All right, then I'm going to call this Saline City Council work meeting to order at 6:03 p.m. Members present are Council Members Gearboss, CO, Rice, Lesh, Paramount, Mayor Pro Tem Dillon, Mayor Morrow. From City staff, we have the City Manager, the City Clerk, and the Community Development Director. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as submitted unless there are amendments?
So moved.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Dillon to approve as submitted. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Lesh. All those in favor of approving the agenda as submitted signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. There are no absences, so we'll proceed to public comments. Under the Open Meetings Act, any person may come forward at this time, make comment or question to City Council. This public comment period will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Anyone who would like to speak is requested, but of course not required, to state his or her name and address for the record. Are there any citizen comments? And just real quick, this is a council work meeting exclusive to an economic development strategy for our community. So let me ask you this question. What brought you here this evening? Okay, so that'll be that is an enumerated action item at our regular meeting, which begins at 7. So I would encourage you, you're certainly welcome to comment on economic development in the city, but if you want to talk about weight restrictions, that is on the regular meeting agenda, which begins at 7. You'll be afforded an opportunity to speak to that issue at both the beginning and end of the meeting. Okay? Any questions, comments pertaining to economic development? And Clerk Royal, did we receive any written comments in advance of tonight's meeting in which the individual wanted their remarks read at this time? Easy enough. Then we transition to the one and only discussion item, which is economic development. City Manager O'Toole, are you kicking this off, or do you want to defer to our community development?
I'm going to hand it over to Director Harrington to start with his presentation.
Okay, and then real quick, I'm going to give you 3 to pass down, and I'm going to give you 3 to pass down. I believe that either Mayor Pro Tem Dillon and or Council Member CO may have some issues to report out on. They attended a downtown revitalization workshop last Thursday at SEMCOG office in downtown Detroit, and then earlier today, Mr. Harrington and I were also in Detroit for the kickoff meeting of the SEMCOG's Economic Development Council. And the sheet that I distributed is sort of the scope and focus of the group. I'll be able to give an update on that as well. So, Mr. Harrington, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. The presentation might seem a little niche in light of the broadness of the topic of economic development. I think just a very quick overview. As a city, our primary avenue or point of entry in economic development is really through the development of land and the attraction, retention, and expansion of existing businesses within the city, and then the attraction of new businesses to our city. So in light of understanding that, one of the ways that the city is pretty limited in the incentives that it can provide, as some of you are definitely aware of, others maybe not so much. So this is a proposal to maybe expand an incentive that the city could develop to help with the attraction and retention of specific types of businesses in area, the downtown, where we are really struggling to get and retain retail, dining, et cetera. So I'll kick it off. It's preliminarily called the Main Street Blueprint Initiative. We mentioned this during our budget workshop session a few weeks ago. And I think the primary purpose of this is just to get additional direction from the City Council on how you feel about a program of this nature and what your thoughts and suggestions would be. So an overview of the proposed program is that the Main Street Blueprint, it's a word salad here. Main Street Blueprint Initiative is being proposed to support and attract retail, dining, and entertainment businesses into Saline's downtown. The proposed is a $52,000 allocation in fiscal year 2025. The grants, it would be a grant program, would help cover the cost of architectural/design drawings up to $4,000 per applicant. 52 divided by 4 is 13, so it could fund 13 total grants, up to 15 total grants. So why fund blueprints? So the program provides benefits to both the businesses themselves and the public. The state of Michigan building code requires drawings of a commercial nature to be sealed by a licensed design professional. They are required for virtually every commercial space. There are very limited exceptions where a design professional, either an engineer or architect, does not have to provide a seal on a floor plan or the interior of a building for their mechanical, electrical, plumbing changes, for their, if they're adding a partitioning wall, things of that nature. Additionally, another option for these funds, so the drawings are reviewed by the city and its consultants for compliance with the building code prior to the issuance of permits and the issuance of a certificate of occupancy. So essentially the process is a business says, hey, I'm coming into Mr. Kinley's space downtown. I'm going to do, let's just use a real example with Rod Marsh. I'm going to put in a barber shop in this space. I'm going to make a couple of alterations, put up a few walls, put up a coffee shop area, whatever it might be. They have to provide us a drawing from an engineer and architect showing the floor plan, showing that it meets the clearances. I think a very common misconception that people have about building inspections is that Mr. Feldkamp, when he's out in the field, is being able to just catch things by eye for the conformity or lack thereof of the building code. In reality, most of the conformity with the building code is done through the plans. We're making sure that what they said they built is what they did build, but it's being previously reviewed by somebody else before our inspector ever gets out there to ensure that, yes, this HVAC system is designed to code. Yes, the plumbing fixtures are where they need to be. Yes, this is, in fact, ADA, meets the state's requirements for accessibility, which are largely based off the ADA accessibilities from the federal government. So beyond using funds for those types of drawings, which really help them get permits and thus the certificate of occupancy, they could also be used for structural or engineering assessments of space, which is likely more applicable to existing businesses, whether they're looking to add a roof deck or maybe add a second floor to their building, that type of thing. So from a business benefits perspective, the drawings that are required can cost anywhere between $1,000 to $10,000. Even for a pretty minor floor plan like the one that Saline Main Street had to do for the 109, it cost them over $5,000 to get all the drawings, and some of that was done through favors to reduce that cost. But at a market rate, they were looking about $5,000 to have an architect and an engineer evaluate the joists of their floor, the doors, et cetera, to make sure that it was sufficient. And that it would be a nearly ubiquitous cost for businesses. Like I said, there are very limited exceptions where these drawings are not required. It also ensures that the certificate of occupancy process moves a little bit smoother for the businesses. Having the drawings ahead of time ensures that they're being reviewed ahead of time and that someone hasn't started swinging a hammer and putting up walls before they've submitted the proper paperwork, permits, and reviews. It's also my opinion that the need for it would be reduced over time. Drawings are not required in the specific instances when you're switching from the same use to another with no alterations of the proposed space. So if a barber moves into a barber shop and does not choose to move any walls, or if a retailer moves into a retailer space and does not choose to make any structural alterations to the building, they don't need that seal. So that it would allow us to set up spaces that are more apt at getting taken over. Unfortunately, because of some of the procedural things that happened in the building department, 20, 30, 40 years ago, we don't have good documentation on a lot of these spaces. We don't know that it was ever properly reviewed. The building code was updated in 2015 and is about to be updated again at the state level, and we would have to re-review many of those things for modern compliance standards that unfortunately just were not done in the past. So again, this would allow us to create spaces that we know are retail ready, that are restaurant ready, that are service ready, and hopefully reduce that need over time as businesses kind of move from one space to another. From a public benefit standpoint, the drawings ahead of time ensure a smoother certificate of occupancy process. I guess it's really a city benefit, but it is a headache from the city to kind of disentangle what work was done by a previous tenant, and it moves us along and gets us kind of less in the punitive end of things and more into let's just move you into the space and make this as smooth as possible. The compliance with state codes, which is done through the review of these drawings, means a safer building for Saline residents and visitors. The city will gain a better understanding of our own downtown buildings, have a better idea of the square footage, existing tenant suites, et cetera, which provides another benefit to the city in terms of marketing those spaces out. And the city will then also have these drawings on file. We retain all these drawings. We frequently provide old floor plans to people to the best of our abilities to give their architect a lot less work to do and hopefully expedite and lower the cost of that. But again, having these things on file for more of our properties over time can only be a benefit to the building department from a staff standpoint. In our proposal, we've kind of narrowly tailored the types of businesses that this would be available to. Talking to landlords in our downtown, there's not as much of a difficulty in them trying to find a prospective office tenant or a service tenant. What they do struggle to find are retail, dining, and entertainment. And that's an area that we hear from our residents frequently, whether it was through the update of the master plan, pulse points that the Main Street organization has done, or I'm sure many anecdotal conversations you've had. So we're trying to narrowly tailor to the businesses we know we struggle to attract and maybe reduce their startup costs, reduce the market failure that we're seeing, and attract them to our town. So dining and restaurant establishments, businesses that generate more than 75% of their revenue from retail sales. The caveat there is to kind of cut out hair salons because oftentimes they're independent contractors, so the sales that they make are through products, not through the individuals selling their hair cutting services, so that's why that caveat's there. Event spaces, entertainment venues, and galleries, businesses offering regular classes in arts, crafts, cooking, or other creative disciplines, and then lastly, family-oriented entertainment businesses, venues, so arcades, bowling alleys, escape rooms, laser tags, indoor players, centers, axe throwing, et cetera. It's a pretty broad category family-oriented being the key word there as opposed to adult entertainment, which is, again, why the caveat is there. So the proposed application requirements would be a title document showing ownership or a signed lease agreement for a tenant space with the Main Street service area, a formal proposal from a licensed architect, design, engineer professional for eligible services, in this case, probably the build out of those tenant suites, a description of the proposed business, an expected date of opening, and a business plan. Business plans are never been easier to get, either through using AI, which many businesses do now to help generate pretty preliminary boilerplate documents, or through the Washtenaw Community College, which offers plenty of services to help you create a business plan at no cost to yourself. And then lastly, applicants must have a walkthrough of the proposed space with the city building department before application. This is one thing that we've done with several of our businesses downtown, and we're trying to keep growing the service. We did it with Drop Top Pizza, and it seemed to have pretty good effects. Essentially, just allowing us to come into the space, not to do a gotcha, not to do anything, but to give you a heads up that your accessibility issues on your back door are going to be a really big problem. Like, that's something you should have your architect know now, rather than going through 3 rounds of reviews, paying for those reviews, paying for a reissuance or a reinspection that's required because you didn't meet that requirement to begin with. So it really is designed, again, to avoid headaches down the road and to give people a better understanding of what's to be expected with the building department and the state building code process. And it's free of charge. Again, we're trying to do this to make our lives easier. It saves staff time to do this. And then lastly, the proposed terms of the award. So far, the maximum award is proposed to be $4,000. Businesses would be eligible to receive it funding once, as we're only allocating up to a maximum or a minimum of 13 of these. The funds must be expended within 90 days, which I think is pretty reasonable if they have that proposal before they even submit. The business must open within a year of applying, and the business must acknowledge receiving support from the program on their social media accounts, which is another fairly common thing I saw in other types of grant programs, although that was not delineated as much, and something I think we would still need to work on.
Very good. City Manager O'Toole, do you care to make some additional comments?
Yes, just to help steer the conversation a little bit, I think the topics we're specifically looking for consensus or feedback on would be generally the target parameters. So think eligible applicants, like the types of eligibility criteria that Mr. Harrington outlined, the target area, that being downtown, the total allocation amount of $52,000, and then the target, either number of years or how many businesses per year we'd be targeting to serve. Anything else that you want consensus?
No, I think that's good. I think we still have some staff questions to answer after this meeting, but.
And did I miss, I stepped out for just a few minutes, my apologies, to get a document that I left in my office. Was there a specific recommendation made as part of the presentation of how many years and how many applicants are recommended to be eligible in a given calendar year?
Yeah, I can. The proposed allocation was $52,000 for fiscal year '25, which would serve a minimum of 13 applicants.
If you using the 4,000 figure.
Right. I don't believe we have 13 vacancies downtown currently. So it would be a combination of existing businesses that are looking to add amenities like the Fine Print Bookshop, which is looking to add a coffee shop potentially, or Breck and Grill that's talked about a roof deck kind of thing. And then funding new businesses, but I don't know how long those dollars will last. It's kind of a pilot program by nature. So.
Yeah, and I would say it's certainly easy for us to structure it without a specific sunset if we just identify it as like a committed line item for that project purpose. So as long as there wasn't specific council direction that you only wanted X number a year, we could certainly just decide on an allocation and then spend it down as the appropriate applicants were identified.
Great. I concur with that assessment. I would not favor a sunset for this program. I'm very supportive. I've said publicly, I've said privately, that we lack the sufficient tools in our tool belts to help incentivize and encourage business development and growth in our community. I guess that would be specific to our downtown. And anything we can do to expand our tax base, add amenities, and create new jobs, it's very advantageous to the current residents and future residents of Saline. So I'm very comfortable moving forward with no sunset, with the dollar amount, that's been articulated as part of the presentation, with the cap of $4,000 per applicant. Were there any other specific issues you wanted?
The specific eligible applicant types, largely retail and restaurant uses.
Yep. I agree with that. I think that staff has put a lot of time and energy into vetting, evaluating, and proposing this, and I'm very much inclined to support the recommendation and eager to move forward. I guess I have two questions. If there's consensus tonight, what subsequent action needs to be taken before this program is launched?
Well, the allocation is already identified in the General Appropriations Act that we're approving later tonight. So that will be the kickoff. Basically, at that point, Mr. Harrington and I would put together the final parameters, and those materials would become available for applicants to start pursuing as of July 1, 2024.
Very good. And how do you envision disseminating information to make sure that eligible businesses or individuals know of this program? Press release, social media post, something in the FYI newsletter, website, all of the above?
All of the above, Main Street organization, because it's their primary service area, and then I think really the landlords downtown would, I've talked to Mr. Kinley about this already. I know that Mr. Dunn would also be a big fan of this. I think that this will help them maybe fill some of those vacancies and just add an additional carrot to some businesses that are maybe on the fence about starting up in Saline and make like I said, it's really meant to just drive the startup cost for rather low capital businesses just a little bit lower to make it a little bit more attractive to do business in Saline.
Very good. Okay, that's excellent. We will do a round of questions. So if you have questions for the city manager or the community development director, ask them now. If you don't have any questions or you want to transition from your question period into offering some consensus on the points that were raised by the city manager, that would be appreciated. We'll do deliberate rounds of questions and comments, acknowledging each of you for this item, and then for some of the more substantive items that are on tonight's regular agenda, including new business item 24-97 and 2498. This evening, I'm going to start with Councilmember Gearbaugh, work my way down to the end of the dais, jump back to Lesh, and then end with Dillon, and then remind me in 2 weeks' time we'll do just the opposite. We'll start with Dillon, jump to Harmon, and then end with Gearbaugh. So, Mr. Gearbaugh, you'll have 5 minutes for questions. If you don't have any questions, you can redirect to your thoughts on this matter.
Thank you, Mayor. And I have a few that I just want to get clarification thing.
Please.
So we've talked about administrative oversight and so forth. So this will be handled by the city in terms of tracking and awarding, and I don't know if we're going to do it by committee or by staff member, however it's determined.
Right, I think the specific allocation amount would need to be discussed, but I do think after speaking to the city manager O'Toole earlier, it would make more sense for a variety of reasons to do it within the city structure rather than have an outside agency disseminate the dollars.
While I don't have a problem with the total amount, I would prefer to have it spread over 3 years. I'm throwing $50,000 into 1 year. I don't know how many, like you said, whether we have 13 businesses or not. I do know that there's $12,000 available in the EDC budget that we could use instead of having to take it out of general fund if we wanted to use those funds and burn that off. Again, as I mentioned, I see this as a pilot program, so I'm very encouraged by it and want to see it happen. But that's my thing. It's like, I think for the first year, if we had 3 or 4 potential ones that are awarded, that would be a great way to start. For me, understanding is qualifications and the implementation of it. You've identified the timeframes and things, but like an example, if the business doesn't get rented within, let me back it up. The idea, is it the property owner or is it the tenant that's going to be the applicant?
Tenant, in most cases, is the applicant. Usually they're stuck with a triple net lease, so they're responsible for the build out of their space 95% of the time. And even when they're not responsible for the build out, the expectation to provide those drawings has usually, in my experience, fallen on the tenant, not on the property owner as much.
And so no speculation. So if property owners wanted to do speculating of their space to convert it into nothing like that.
Yeah, so the requirements that I have in that full packet that was attached tonight requires that they have a clear date certain of opening, and they have to have a business plan. Like I said, the whole idea was that you were supposed to be the business applying, not the property owner necessarily.
Okay. And then the only other one I would have is when we say eligibility by business, we know that we have only 1 or 2 landlords that have a lot of large numbers of spaces. So the potential for them to have 3 or 4 of these come to them is a possibility. Is there a concern on that, or is our goal just to get those spaces filled with committed businesses?
I think the latter is probably true. I think the goal is to try to fill them with committed businesses, for a variety of reasons. We had some businesses that seemed like they were on the trajectory to be, before I arrived, that seemed like they were going to be very successful, and then for a variety of reasons weren't. And it would have been very helpful to have a plan like this in place to have gotten the next business in the door, essentially, to take it over. So, again, though, the hope of the program is that it creates a solid retail space or a solid service space that won't necessarily need that reallocation of dollars simply because it's already code compliant.
And then just lastly, we're in compliance with state or any other concerns with how we're using taxpayers' dollars for this initiative.
Right, there's something I have to talk more with city manager or two, but yes, I believe that to be the case.
Thank you. I support this. I think for me, it's just piloting in it and seeing how well we do it and then expanding on it. But I would like to commit it for 3 years in terms of that dollar amount that you mentioned.
Mr. Gearboug, may I ask a question? Because this is absolutely a pilot program, and we want to ensure it's successful if we continue it into subsequent fiscal years, would you be recommending a formal report and update from staff, assuming this is implemented July 1, around the end of the calendar year?
Yes, I mean, we should have an annual review of how successful this is, or even half, mid-year, whatever.
Yeah.
But,
I would guess I'd recommend mid-year, probably December, and then a more focused conversation when we evaluate the budget for the subsequent fiscal year.
Okay, so 2 status reports in the first fiscal year.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Rice, you have 5 minutes if you'd like it.
Sure, just a couple things. I am a proponent of investing now. I think now's the time. We have a lot of space. We have folks who are interested. My question is, so with this mid-year review of it, would we be able to legally adjust, taking a look at it, adjust the criteria, adjust the allowed use, things like that at mid-year? So say we only have one applicant that really met all the criteria, so we've got this money, what else can we do? Can we change it mid-year?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay. Then I'm full in on investing the full amount for the first year. I do agree with Mr. Gearbaugh that I would like to see it, as a 3-year pilot program, but I'm all in on the amount that you want to spend this year. I think incentivizing as much as we can for folks to get downtown, for updating some of these buildings that we know need updated, all of these little expenses that, the more that we can help business owners, the better. So that's all I have to say. I think this is a great presentation. I thank you for putting it together so clearly for us.
Very good. Thank you, Councilmember Rice. Councilmember Harmount, you have 5 minutes if you'd like it.
Yeah, I have a question, and hopefully you didn't answer this already, but is there some sort of review of a business plan as part of this grant information? Like, we're going to look at it and say, oh, this business looks like they're going to be here for a while, or no, this is a really super repetitive business plan that is maybe not going to make.
Right, so it is a requirement, at least that I have so far, that they submit a business plan, because there are a lot of folks who come in with no business plan, and I think that's where you kind of teeter on the brink of disaster when you're talking about using public funds to subsidize something like that. But in terms of the quality of the business plan and the thoroughness or the repetitiveness or the competition, I think the business types we have chosen are designed to inherently not be contradictory or redundant to what we already have downtown, maybe with the exception of the dining restaurant.
So if
I wouldn't know how to grade a business plan, I guess, if that's the question being asked. I think that's not above my, it's just a kind of a different subjective question.
Okay, so we're not going to be grading their business plan, we're just going to be accepting business plans. We're not going to be looking at it from a.
I will definitely be looking at it, but I don't think it's like I said, I wouldn't know how to grade one in the context of this program.
Okay. The other question I have is if there's 2 similar properties, like we wanted to update, is that historic aspect of the downtown creating an increased cost of the architectural drawings? And then I guess my follow-up question is $4,000 enough, especially if we're having the tenants paying something that we are really doing a service to the city because we don't have drawings?
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting question. So there's 2 things. One is that, yes, the buildings are an oddity. So like Murphy's Crossing, for example, which is the L-shaped building on South Ann Arbor in East Michigan Ave, or it is East Michigan Ave. The spaces are not traditionally allocated. They're not like traditionally sized tenant spaces, which is true if you go to any downtown anywhere. They're not like a standard like you would see in a strip mall, which have a more specific dimensional requirement wherever you go. So Yes, in one sense, they are more expensive because there's different things to take into account. The HVAC might not be the most obvious place. The plumbing might not be the most obvious place due to the age of the building, due to the remodels that had occurred. However, most tenants are renting usually less than 2,000, usually less than 1,000 square feet of space. So the cost to do an architectural drawing is really based on the area in totality more so than the oddities of the space necessarily. So there's some factor in there. I don't think the program will cover every single business's cost in totality, but I think it would definitely discount it. And like I mentioned, they would have to do it anyway, so it's still a real benefit, I would say. But I don't see it as a way to capture all the costs that all the businesses might have for architectural drawings.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else, Councilmember Harmel?
No.
Okay. Councilmember Lesh?
Just one thing, really. If you're given a grant and they don't get their ducks in a line and get anything going within 90 days, is there some sort of mechanism in this whole procedure to claw back some of that money?
I think it would likely end up functioning more as a reimbursement program than anything else to ensure that the product that the city needs to see is done. And that's something City Manager O'Toole and I will work on as we get more into the nitty-gritty if this gets your approval. It's kind of hard to invest a lot of time into the specifics of a program.
No, I'm a huge fan of any economic development that we can do, and I think it's a great plan. And, if it goes well these first few years, I'd even like to see it extended to the two ends of town, too.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Lesh. Councilmember Seal?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Your Honor. Your question was kind of partially asked and answered by Councilman Lesh, but I see you have a requirement that the business must open within 365 days of the grant of the money. So Jack comes forward with a great idea about having a marble shooting house. And I go through the whole process. I'm granted $4,000 for the engineering study. I get it all done. I'm well on my way, and all of a sudden, the nation is swept with the latest version of the Formosan tree frog flu. And everything shuts down because everybody's quarantined. Do I have to pay that grant back?
No, as long as you've completed the task, right? So what we're trying to accomplish is those drawings. And if you've done that process, submitted for reimbursement, then technically you've met the city's requirement on that front. If you don't then open in 365 days, what I would say is you would be deemed ineligible for any future grants from the same program.
Okay, all right. I'm in favor of the whole program. I think it's a wonderful opportunity to encourage business in the city. And I'll have to think about this marble idea.
And just to jump off City Manager O'Toole's point, the benefit to the city really is those drawings, because like I said, we do frequently provide old drawings to businesses when available. It's far more common in the strip centers that we have them. So like, for example, we gave Planet Fitness Workout One or whatever, Powerhouse, whatever was there before, so they could see something to go off of. And again, it just saves their architect time from necessarily having to always remeasure every nook and cranny of the building, and kind of having an idea of what they should expect when they open the ceiling. Like, is the HVAC really where they said it was? And then that opens up a different can of worms. But it's been helpful in the past to just be able to have that on file. One of the biggest issues is we have no architectural drawings for Murphy's Crossing. So it's another big benefit of this program is that some of those downtown buildings, we really just don't have adequate information on.
Thank you, Mr. Seal, unless you have anything further, sir.
No?
Oh, easy enough. Then Mayor Pro Tem Dillon, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. I'm going to start off with sort of the big piece for me right now is that I'm not really fond that this is only focused on downtown. I think that we have areas within our entire community that would benefit from this. And when we're talking about things like family-oriented businesses, like a bowling alley, there's going to be very limited places in downtown that could accommodate things like that. But we do have areas in the rest of our community that could benefit from that. So I want to make sure that we're not stepping over something that could have potential for us. And so I really would like to see this to be a citywide program. And maybe there's eligibility, and as in that we take the dollars and we say, okay, 1/3 of it is for downtown, 1/3 is for the east, 1/3 is for the west, or whatever the case may be. Or you know, 40% is for downtown, the rest can be used 60% throughout the community. I want to, I always say this, I want our residents to realize that our community is more than our downtown. Our downtown is absolutely important, but at the same time, so are all of our other businesses that have invested in our community. And so I want to be very adamant in that aspect of it.
Could I add a note here? So absolutely 100% council's prerogative. If you want to split that money into different sections, please provide that direction. We're happy to do so. I do think there is a better tool for the commercial districts that are outside of the downtown area, and that would be the state's commercial rehabilitation district. That is a special designation that we identify. We identify what properties would fall into that criteria, and similar to what we've done with industrial facilities, then open up the opportunity for tax exemption on those properties to then be redeveloped. That is a very powerful tool for redevelopment specifically. So in places where you're not just looking for like a tenant to change hand quickly, but wholesale redevelopment of a use, that is an excellent tool. And I would highly recommend we identify on the west and east side a district for that type of use. It does require a little bit of groundwork on our part in terms of collecting the correct data on those different parcels to identify which ones we would qualify. But from my experience, that's the tool if you want to change uses or see whole-scale redevelopment of sites, not just different tenants coming in and out.
And just for your edification, I'm sure you're aware of this, some people on the dais and those who may be watching at home may not be, but that is the exact tool that we use for the Imagine Theater complex. So prior to your tenure, that was a derelict grocery store, formerly a Farmer Jack, subsequent a country market. It had been vacant for several years, and it was repurposed into the theater that is today. It is a wonderful tool, and I think there could be some additional work that we do to precisely what you just articulated, designate some additional areas on our eastern and western corridors.
Yeah, I wanted to put that out there because we can do this project and that. It's not an and or, but just so you know, there is more on the horizon, I think, for the west and east side commercial districts as well.
Okay, but then how does that tie into when you talk about commercial districts? Are those more just like a shopping plaza aspect?
No, they can be
maybe
standalone buildings.
parcels?
Yep.
Okay. I'd like to see something about that come forward sort of simultaneously, that we're going to put out two programs at the same time, so it doesn't look as though we're doing that, and then understand, I do think that $52,000, that it's a really odd number. So where are those dollars coming from that we're allocating?
Well, if the max was 4, which I thought would be pretty sufficient to cover 100 to 75% to 100% of smaller tenant spaces, really looking at retail primarily, I think that's an appropriate dollar range. Assembly uses are going to cost more because there's just more that goes into those building permits. 50 is not divisible by 4, so that was why we moved it to 52, so you had an even amount of grants if the maximum number of participants, or if the minimum number of participants all took the maximum amount of award. So that was why 52 was the number chosen as opposed to 50.
Right. But I guess right now we're funding a huge amount, we're putting a lot of dollars into it when we don't have that many empty spaces downtown. If this is only for our downtown, do we have that many retail spaces or vacant spaces that would be redeveloped to utilize all of those dollars? That's why I think, as Mr. Gearbaugh had indicated, scaling it over 3 years or such, because what I don't want to do is spend all of the money first year, and it could be very successful, and then all of a sudden, come next year, we have a new set of vacancies, but we don't have dollars allocated because we've already upfronted them. So I'd like to see it sort of as a tiered process. Personally, for me, I'd rather see it that way so that we know that we have something left in the coffer moving forward. And then I did have a question, that it's very similar to what Councilmember Harmount had mentioned, which is there any kind of financial verification, the business plan, like making sure this is actually a viable option for somebody?
Well, so one thing I will note, technically qualifies as a financial verification if they have entered into a lease agreement. They've already shown that they have the financial wherewithal to put down the required deposits for that property. I would be hesitant to recommend that we get into the business of evaluating individual business plan criteria. Having done that professionally in a different capacity, it is very much a numbers game. You need a lot of analytical time spent to determine your criteria. And frankly, for a $4,000 grant, I mean, if we were giving out $100,000 revolving loans, 100% I would put that program in place. I think it would be a pretty significant undertaking of staff time to do the type of analysis that you'd need to do to essentially underwrite a business for a $4,000 grant.
Okay. I appreciate that. And then just really quickly, one of the things that I will say, because I think I'm running out of time, is that the eligible businesses, I'd really like to tighten up what that language means. Galleries is a very nondescript type thing. I mean, I think I'd like us to decide what do we want our downtown to be and sort of gear it a little bit more towards that. It's very open-ended. There's a lot of possibilities here. And so understanding, you know, we talked about dining and restaurants as the first thing there. Well, I thought we just said that if you're going in sort of a like-for-like situation, then you don't really have to do the same kind of drawings. So, I mean, the restaurants that we have in our area right now, those specific spaces, are really built in a certain way to which the building can only accommodate it in a certain way. And so understanding, you know, is that what we need? Do we need more restaurants? Do we need more entertainment? Do we need more retail? And really sort of gearing it toward what we want to see in our downtown. So with that, I think I'm probably out of time.
You got about 30 seconds.
Oh, I'll stop there. Thank you.
Okay. I get the sense that we have consensus. Do you feel the
Yes.
same way?
I think it's just a matter of coming up with some parameters that everyone feels comfortable with, possibly splitting it up over maybe 2 years to initially kick it off. And then,
A mid-year update at the end of this calendar year, fourth quarter of 2024, and then a more focused discussion on the future of the pilot program during the budget negotiations in the spring, very early summer of 2025.
I guess, based on council feedback, would council like to have a voice on the committee that reviews applications? No, you just leave that to staff?
Yeah, I
Okay.
think that's a operational,
Yep.
yep.
Less political.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I guess the only outstanding issue that I see, because I think it was a very valid point, and you tell me if you think this turnaround is sufficient. I'd like to see a presentation, ideally at a work meeting, on an incentive for our eastern and western corridor, specific to the commercial rehabilitation status or anything else you deem appropriate, sometime in the next 30 or 60 days. Do you think you could turn that around and work with my office and staff to schedule a work meeting either in June or early July?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Probably leaning more towards 60, but.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Gearbaugh?
Just one question on that. I don't necessarily want to limit it just to the east and west side,
No.
because I think that will apply to some of our redevelopment properties, even downtown. A CRD, won't it?
Yes, but I think you should stay very focused and identify 1 to 2 locations to start. You don't want to turn your entire commercial area into a rehabilitation district, and then stymie yourself for any future tax growth, especially when we're already subject to Headley. So piecemeal it. Let's make sure we identify target areas that align with our strategic goals.
There's nothing that would prevent us from expanding. in the
Absolutely
future.
not,
Yeah.
nothing at all.
But you did raise a good question. Perhaps understanding the impacts of doing that, as you just mentioned, affecting
Correct.
Headley or our tax base and all that would be.
And that's really where the additional analysis comes in. We need to understand the age and condition of different buildings, the current uses, what our targeted uses would be in the future, and then the tax implication of those changes over time.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
So again, that meeting, late, I guess the earliest we could probably turn something around would be our second meeting in June or sometime in.
I would say we're probably targeting July.
Okay, very good. Okay. Anything else on this issue that you'd like to bring up or discuss? City Manager O'Toole, you're good. Mr. Harrington? Are there any other items that you'd like to bring forward at this time, Mr. Harrington? No? Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Dillon?
Just really quickly, one of the other things I was wondering, because it's obviously something we're going to talk about during our regular meeting, is can we find a way to partner with Ann Arbor Spark and other economic development outside of the city to really draw attention to this incentivized program?
Yeah, absolutely. It's something I would share with Ann Arbor Spark. They often get calls from smaller retail service businesses. They don't usually really serve those folks, though, but I think this would be a great way to get on a larger radar of business people who are interested in doing business in Washtenaw County, that are looking for a place that's very hospitable and eager and interested in retail service, whatever it might be. So yes, I think we can definitely put it on their radar, but they will not, it's kind of out of their realm. They're far more focused on office industrial users.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Dillon or Councilmember Seal, is there anything you'd like to share, reference the SEMCOG workshop you attended last Thursday morning in downtown Detroit regarding downtown revitalization and gathering spaces?
I'll defer to you. But
Oh, thank you. So as the mayor just indicated, last week, Councilmember Seal, myself, and the Main Street Director and the President of Main Street all attended a SEMCOG program entitled Community Events Driving Placemaking and Economic Development. I will say that I think Councilmember CO and I may have been the only council members there. It was a lot of DDAs, a lot of economic development people. And so it was very interesting to get the perspective from that side of the table also. And a lot of it focused on economic development, events tied to economic development, and understanding, what drives placemaking and that. And there were just a lot of things that they talked about which are kind of looking at things through different lenses, one being that not look at it as an event, look at it as a business or economic development opportunity, and then sort of meeting people where they're having their experience. So you're understanding what kind of experience they're having and how it's fitting their needs. And then also, it just provides that perspective of you can look back and say, yes, this worked, no, this did not work. One of the big things that I thought was sort of like an aha moment for me was they talked about these 4 pillars that they use for measuring things. And it's ringing registers, fundraising, friend raising, and community awareness. And I think understanding that not every event's going to touch those, but understanding how each event fits into those and finding the balance. And I thought that was a really interesting point. And they did focus a bit on safety. I know that's one of the things that we talk about, and how communities have overcome safety concerns while still remaining safe for their events. And they really said that there's a lot of ways to be creative. You don't have to be ugly and in your face to do things, but there are ways to do it. There's, a lot of retractable things nowadays that do provide those elements of safety, but that it should always be something that we should be looking at. There was also a couple of things that they talked about, a big section was about using AI. And that's something that I think could be a really interesting aspect for us. There are these QR code generators where we all see what a QR code is, but there's some that have built-in analytics to them. So when you're clicking that, it's telling them who you are, where you're from, like all the information from your phone is translating to them. And it's a really good way to get feedback where you can gauge, the people that are attending Oktoberfest, are they people from within your community? Are they people traveling from 10 miles away, 20 miles away, 40 miles away? And it's a really good way to gauge, how your placemaking is working. Who is your audience? And if it is locals, are there certain things that they want to see? If there's people from out of town, what are their concerns about coming into your community? The other thing that they focused on a little bit was accessibility, and I know I kind of talk about this quite often, and they said that every event needs to be accessible to every person, and finding ways it doesn't have to be difficult. And you just need to, by expanding the ways in which you're accessible, you're also expanding your guest base. And so keeping that in mind, and it's a real big selling point for events that, whatever type of amenities you need to offer, of making sure that the community knows about that. And like I said, there's definitely a few different things that they talked about with AI and finding. There's a lot of analytics that you can kind of get from behind the scenes. And that was very interesting of whether or not we want to kind of start looking at that and understanding who our audience is.
Very good. Yeah, excellent. Mr. CEO, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I found it very interesting because I approach these things from, of course, like we all do, I guess, from our past experience. And as a police officer, when they had special events, I always thought, egads, another thing we have to gear up for and prepare for and provide safety for, and, what can go wrong? What do we have to worry about in terms of safety and so on? It's really interesting to see these things are displayed or talked about as an economic opportunity for the community and for community development, and how these things bring attention not only to the particular event, but to the community itself. And the one person that I thought was really interesting was a lady who's was she the DDA director from Rochester?
Yes.
She talked about their Christmas Festival of Lights and how they've expanded it and included many more things. And I think we've done something like that here with our holiday parade. We've got now the tree lighting tied in. We do the cocoa crawl with it. They did a similar thing with a cookie sale where they sold a tin, or they sold 100 tins. You paid $35. The money went to a charitable organization in the community, and all the businesses were encouraged to provide cookies that they then put in these tins. And there was such a demand for them that apparently the first year the tins sold out in 7 minutes. The next year they sold out in 3 minutes because people realized that you had to get there right now to get these things if you're going to get one. So it was just really interesting to hear from her perspective, and as excited as she was about how the role that she plays in trying to develop and promote the community of Rochester. It was a different experience for me to see it through those kind of eyes.
Very interesting. Thank you both. Appreciate you attending. Questions or comments, Councilmember Rice?
I hate to be the last person to ask a question. Mr. Harrington, if you could, can you spare 5 minutes to explain to us why we do not have a DDA currently?
Sure. So pretty much the entire stretch of US 12 Michigan Avenue is currently in a TIF district, which stands for Tax Increment Financing. It's a municipal finance tool. It's established pretty long ago. I think the current one that overlays our downtown sunsets in 2040. Provides a tremendous benefit to municipal finances for us to do all sorts of programs, infrastructure updates, et cetera. A DDA, a Downtown Development Authority, is a type of tax increment finance district, and you can't overlay one with the other. It would essentially make the one that you overlay it on it null and void. It would revert to the one that's underneath, which is the TIF that currently exists. Since most, if not all, of our downtown properties are in that TIF, a DDA would effectively capture nothing, which would then make it not worthwhile in terms of cost and dollars to set up. So it's mainly more of a financial loophole issue than anything else. That City Manager O'Toole might have further explanation.
No, I do think you did a great job. I would give you an A on that essay.
Let's take it. Much less than 5 minutes.
Yeah, well done. Thanks. I just wanted the description for the public because I know that's been part of the conversation over the last couple of weeks.
Right, finance laws, woo.
It's exciting.
Well, I'll wrap up this conversation providing a brief synopsis of the handout that I disseminated at the top of the hour. So this is the scope of SEMCOG's recently established Economic Development Council. Mr. Harrington and I attended the kickoff meeting in downtown Detroit earlier this afternoon at 1 o'clock. I think the council consists of between 30 and 40 members. Including staff representation from SEMCOG, a lot of community colleges, the Chaldean Chamber of Commerce, What other entities am I missing? DTE, Henry Ford Health System, and then municipalities included either represented by elected officials or by appointed officials, Madison Heights, Milan, Saline, Warren, Dearborn, Detroit, and then 2 full-service townships, Bedford in Monroe County and Chesterfield Township in Macomb County. I believe there are also representatives from Wayne County, Oakland County, and Macomb County present today. So again, earlier this afternoon was the kickoff meeting of the council. They do not anticipate a subsequent meeting of the full group until October. However, in the ensuing months, there will be breakout sessions and town halls on the three-legged stool of economic development, which is, of course, place, talent, and business. I would encourage you, if you are not signed up for the SEMCOG e-blasts, to do so, because you will, of course, be invited and made aware of those town hall events. And if you'd like to attend and provide perspective, you would be strongly encouraged to do so. So this process, they hope to conclude in the either early months or at the mid-year point of 2026, have an adopted economic plan for the entire region, which would include Washtenaw, Livingston, Wayne, Oakland, Macomb, St. Clair, and Monroe counties, so the bulk, or the entirety, rather, of southeast Michigan. And having a comprehensive, holistic economic development plan will allow us to leverage additional dollars through the Economic Development Association, or administration, excuse me, of the United States as outlined on the memo. So more details to come in probably October or late fall after the subsequent meeting. Overall, I thought it was pretty good. Organizational meetings are always a bit dry, but it seemed to be they seemed to assemble a very talented, good group with a lot of expertise, a lot of folks who come from a planning and economic development background. Mr. Harrington, anything else you'd like to add about this afternoon's kickoff meeting?
Right. I think beyond the success or future of the plan itself, and being engaged with the EDA seem to have come with additional benefits. It's just an additional bucket that we can now put Saline in as a member of SEMCOG, and then gives us a little bit more resources if we are, if Forvia or Forcia removes, how we would repurpose that property. They have a lot of site readiness type things that we're already eligible for now as being a member of SEMCOG, which is in relation a member of the EDA. So there's just a little bit larger of a net that we can cast. And it sounds like a lot of the EDA's programs are on a rolling fund, which means that we're constantly able to apply and get feedback on those types of grant applications, which again, I think is just a benefit to our community.
Very good. Are there any additional questions or comments? Okay, then we're going to transition back to the agenda. And unless there is anything else that a member of council would like to bring forward at this work meeting, the chair would be delighted to entertain a motion to adjourn this work meeting at 6:55.
So moved.
That was moved by Gearba. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by, oh boy, I'm going to go with CO on that one. All those in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Meeting is adjourned, and we will reconvene into regular session promptly at 7 p.m. I'd like to call this Saline City Council meeting to order. If you'd please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. We welcome everybody here this evening. There are copies of the agenda on the back table along with a sign-in sheet. We do encourage you to... Okay, there would have been a more appropriate way to express that thought, but Clerk Royal, would you mind making some extra copies of the agenda? Thank you very much. We would encourage you to sign in the back, and there's also hearing devices in the at the back table if you require them. Members present this evening are Council Members Gearbaugh, CO, Rice, Lesh, Harmount, Mayor Pro Tem Dillon, Mayor Morrow, and from city staff, we have the city manager, city clerk, community development director, DPW director Searles I do not believe is here. City engineer is here along with the police chief and city treasurer. At this time, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended. There was one item removed from the consent agenda. That was an appointment to LDFA, TIFA, and EDC. That will be considered at the subsequent meeting. We did not have the petitioner's application in time for this evening's packet.
Move as amended?
Moved by Gearbaugh to move
Second.
the agenda as amended. Was it seconded by Harmount?
Yeah.
Thank you. All those in favor of approving the agenda as amended signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. There are no absences, so we'll proceed to public comments on agenda items. Under the Open Meetings Act, any person may come forward at this time and make comment or question on an item that appears on this agenda. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Anyone who would like to speak is requested, but of course not required, to state his or her name and address for the record. Are there any citizen comments on agenda items this evening? You'll have 3 minutes. Make sure the green light is illuminated. You got to hit the button. On the base of the mic.
Oh, fine. All right, camping fast. I rise and want to be the first person to welcome Phil Center from Ann Arbor. So here we are, Ann Arbor and Saline, the great area. We are going to make something really, really new in the new renewable age. After the new reconstruction, industrialization, now we de-industrialization, decarbonize. So I think this is so good for Ann Arbor. Great leader come over here with the great leader and mayor, the volunteerism blended with academic, economic, everything to do something new. The reason I rise to say so is because encouraged by the speech Whitmore gave to the whole state the new investment funding opportunities. Also 2024 Michigan Healthy Climate Conference. In that meeting, I met quite a lot of people. Phil, I want to know your brother, Phil Roos, R-O-O-S, not a senator, and the leader of Eagle, 1,400 employees in large more. So I met a lot of people. I introduced the initiative of SALT, which is Saline Area Light Tower, as supported by Jack Seal and Mayor. Now, the things should be expanded with the new funding farther down, based on the principle not only change the environment and also renew this age. We're going to be the leader, and Phil will tell us more about a lot of stuff. And I think that the fundamental issue in America and the whole world is climate. Do I have 30 seconds?
40.
Oh, great. Two people say something I really like to share with you. Charles King III. The earth does not belong to us. We belong to the earth. And Bill Gates, he published the book, 2021. Climate crisis, millions of money invest on that. What he says is, are we scientists or are we idiots? So he is very proactively do as Charles with the team, my gardener teacher. So I just start right here and thank you, come over and appreciate it.
Thank you for your comments, Chang Ming. Are there additional citizen comments on agenda items this evening? Please.
I don't know if this works or not. Thank you for having us. I'm Hillary Connors. I live on South Ann Arbor Street. And I'm concerned about the traffic patterns that I've been seeing over the last few years. I actually just looked up on the internet and found out that there are all sorts of classes of trucks. So the rating of 10,000 pounds, you know, I'm not opposed to that being reevaluated, but I would like to point out that, you know, there are all these different classes up to Class 8 and above, and those should, Class 8 and above should never be on South Ann Arbor Street, and yet they are. We've had double gravel haulers. We've had tons of cement truck this year, and those are in Class 8, which should never be on a residential street. School buses would be in Class 6, and of course, we have a lot of local commerce that I have no problem with. I think that, you know, that's just part of living on a busy road. But I feel like with a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit, that's not being, I guess, even managed close to that number. So we have issues of speed. But the big trucks that I'm concerned with are the ones that are extremely heavy, extremely big. They cannot swerve out of the way if a child or an animal were to go into the road. And we have a lot of people walking. We're in a historic district. We have little libraries all around. We have parks all around. We have a school. This is where families walk. And I would hate to see that go away because we have heavy-duty, extra-large, extra-heavy trucks, including cement trucks. So I feel like if you're going to start a discussion about weight limits, look at the different categories, the different classes. They're rated by weight, and decide, you know, are we a residential neighborhood where we can be safe walking, where we can be in our homes and not have, extremely loud booms every time these trucks go by? Do we have to wonder if there's toxic waste in some of them? There was a couple years ago, there were some that I'm sure could have had very bad things inside, and they were going past a couple times a day. 18-wheelers and such. So I know that traffic patterns are troubling to people. I also have to commute to work using 23. It's very frustrating. I never know which way I'm going to get on or what, But truck companies such as Gott's Cement Truck, that is not something that we can, on South Ann Arbor Street, that we can fix for them.
Thank you for your comments. Appreciate it. Any additional citizen comments on agenda items? Please, you'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Sarah Gallagher, and I am a South Ann Arbor Street resident. And I am opposed to any increase in truck traffic on South Ann Arbor Street. On May 10th at 6 a.m., we had a full car hauler coming down the street up from Milan. That's just ridiculous on a neighborhood street. We are also a historic district, and as you expect us to maintain the historic nature of our homes, I would ask you keep the residential nature of our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your comments. Any additional citizen comments on agenda items?
Good evening. My name is Paul Rentschler, and I live at 212 South Ann Arbor Street. Like my neighbors before me, I guess I would like to state my opposition to raising weight limits on South Ann Arbor Street. I've lived there for 22 plus years now. It's always been a busy street. I understand that. We've always had trucks, motorcycles, school buses, etc. The neighborhood has changed in recent years. Neighborhoods tend to go in cycles, I think. We've got a lot of young families, a lot of kids, a lot of pedestrian traffic along the South Ann Arbor Street coming in up the street into town, especially during farmers market or other events in town. Adding to that, increasing the level of traffic noise and increasing the weights wearing on the streets, things that we would hope that you oppose. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate your comments. Any additional citizen comments on agenda items?
I'm Jay Munns. I live at 218 South Ann Arbor Street, and I'd like to echo the sentiment of my neighbors. I don't mind the traffic that is just street traffic, people coming from Milan going through to Ann Arbor. The weight of the trucks, I can remember a time we had a truck that I know was illegal coming up. This was probably 15, 20 years ago. Stopped at the stop sign and just wrinkled the entire pavement and everything. I think they actually tracked down who the company was and we were able to get it repaired for them. But if we just allow this to happen where this becomes a thoroughfare to go up to Wagner Road or whatever, the wear and tear that it will put on the roads coming through, just when we kind of got a really nice downtown section, and as they've said, it's a historic district and everything. And I'm also looking on the agenda too, where we're already seeing some resurfacing and some numbers that the more we can limit that, the better it is for the cost of the city. So I am totally opposed to that also.
Thank you, Jay. We appreciate your comments this evening. Are there any additional citizen comments on agenda items?
Hi, Todd Avery, 232 South Ann Arbor Street. Echoing what's been said before, I think we should oppose any additional increases to those weights allowed on the street. As has been mentioned, it's a residential street. It's a historic part of town that leads right into downtown. I think they've said really well the points of why not, and I just add that I think we should consider going a step further to thinking about how we can make those streets better for residential pedestrians, thinking about the safety, thinking about how that is an extension of the downtown area. I give the example of there's several crosswalks there that aren't very protected right now, and I think there's some, I can tell one by my house where you basically just have to wait and go when it's clear because no car observes it. So I think we need to not go that way to allow more heavier trucks and commercial loads on that street, but go the other way to think about ways in which we can make it more friendly for pedestrians and residents as an extension of the downtown area.
Thank you. Thank you, Todd. Appreciate your comments. Are there any additional citizen comments this evening on agenda items?
Good evening, council members. My name is Michael Rudy. I'm from Ypsilanti, and I'm speaking on behalf of my friend who lives on South Ann Arbor Street. We attended the first part of this meeting. We were speaking very eloquently about economic development and the idea of increasing heavy-duty trucks through the downtown area doesn't necessarily look like it's in coordination or integration with that particular yearning. We also heard, quite frankly, that when we looked at the symbol of the city, right in the center of that is a tree. And that bespeaks the importance of being able to keep the country aspect of this particular town. My friends who live on South Ann Arbor Street really are looking to try to find a way that you can move ahead with economic development without destroying the foundation of a council or a city that really has a rural development. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate your comments. Additional citizen comments on agenda items?
I'm Celia Park. I live at 242 South Ann Arbor Street, and that's right on a corner. So I get to see a lot of the pedestrian traffic that my neighbors are discussing right now and how some of those are pretty unprotected. And right now, as someone has already stated, we do have an issue with increased speed coming up from the south, especially where the speed limit transitions. And so coming into those reduced speed zones and into our pedestrian-filled neighborhood, our residential neighborhood, I don't think it would be a great idea to allow increased heavy vehicle traffic through there. I don't think it's particularly safe to allow that, especially given what others have said. Yeah, opposed.
Thank you for your comment. Any additional citizen comments on agenda items?
Mary Hess, 600 Canterbury Drive. And it's on the public comment on agenda items. I was so excited I got the minutes from April 15th, and it said, as I've spoke many times on this publicly, it says that there were 3 public comments regarding Environmental Commission, the Bixby Marinettes, and regarding public comments. Of course, that was me. But I think it's important when people give their time up to speak of something that is particular concerning to them or they want to celebrate. I think that they should be acknowledged in the minutes. I appreciate the council and all the time, but you are here, I understand, to serve the people. And it's nice to have the public comments. As I noticed at the back of the agenda, it just said there were 2 public comments. That was one meeting. And that's when I got, oh, please, it is important. And like the people speaking tonight, I would think that it would be addressed. And thank you. Oh, and as far as South Ann Arbor Street, the wait, when a big truck is going to stop at 25 or 35 miles an hour, how many feet does it take opposed to a car stopping? And that's a surprise.
Thank you, Mrs. Hess. Are there additional citizen comments this evening on agenda items?
Mr. Mayor, Council. Joe Leslie, also of South Ann Arbor. You have to assume that the ordinance was made for a reason. And one of the underlying reasons would be to the benefit of the community and the city of Saline and its residents. So lifting restrictions, how does that benefit the citizens or the city that is intended to benefit in the first place? We have to keep that in mind. Now, I am absolutely opposed to lifting restrictions. Last summer, there was also a lot of work done at the corner of Pleasant Ridge in South Ann Arbor. Was it designed to the restricted way, or was it designed criteria to what someone might put a truck on it in the future? You know, that would have to be considered for anything that the restriction would be lifted for. So I see on a previous meeting there was suggestions of lifting restrictions, retaining restrictions with better signage. I think that's a good idea, and possibly a study. But I think to me the best thing is as a resident on the street is leave the restrictions the way they are, sign it better, and enforce it better. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate your comments.
Yeah.
Last call. Any additional citizen comments from those in the audience this evening?
Paul from Gas Transmix, and the guy that everybody hates with all the trucks right now, but I'm here to speak on my behalf of my company. Concrete is a perishable load. I have time restrictions to get it off of my truck. I don't know if you guys have ever went to Milan as far as going 23 to 12 into Milan and see how long it took you. So therefore, it takes I use business and just figuring my time and fuel to come to Saline. If I was to run a full day in between, it's $1,500 a day. I don't know what business can afford to do that. Hopefully all my drivers are respectful when we're coming down that road. That's why this is not a problem. I I know years ago we poured your driveway, and I'm sure, I mean, if you had the choice of getting a concrete and somewhere 12 minutes away or 35 minutes away, where would you go? Concrete's the #1 used commodity in the world besides water. Every single one of your guys' houses is built with it. At least one truck of concrete is in every one of your guys' houses. Not a concrete plant, Saline. And I know you guys wouldn't want one in Saline, you know, with the water plant. I mean, we use 15,000 gallons a day. We recycle our water. We do everything we can do to be as green as we can. So being asked to, you know, burn the extra 300-400 gallons, that's a little crazy. Other than that, that's all I can say right now.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate your comments. One last opportunity. Is there any additional citizen comments from those in the audience this evening?
Hello, my name's Rob Connors. I live on 525 South Main Arbor. I would also like to bring up, is there alternate plans for GOTS, different routes that they can take? You know, they just bring up brick coming up our road, but can't they find a different alternate route or maybe create a substation where, you know, they can maybe be in Manchester or north side of Saline? That way they can make runs to the other areas that they want to go to. That's my only comment.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Ma'am? You've attempted to come up several times, so we'll defer to you.
When I first wrote this, I started out really strong. I had a lot of anger, a lot of hostility. That's just my nature. And then I started calming down about it, and I started thinking about my family that I grew up with, my dad and my brothers. They're all blue collar. You know, my husband, he's blue collar, owns a fabrication company. You know, it's, of course we need you. Of course we need you. And we're used to the traffic. We all live there. We're used to a certain amount of traffic. When we bought there, we knew what we were getting into. And I think maybe a lot of it is we're worried that it's going to get bigger and badder. But also, there is no one that is tending to the speeders. There are never any cops down there. I don't know why this is, but, you know, maybe it wouldn't seem as big and bad and scary if people would just slow down. Why won't the cops go down there and help us out, you know? I think a major problem now is with the motorcycles, and this is something that I've had to deal with personally with a run-in when the pink bird was down in the water. Remember the pink bird down there? And trying to get the motorcycles to slow down, and I had a weapon pulled on me and drove straight here to the police station from there, and, you know, trying to protect myself against this guy on a motorcycle that's pulled a weapon on me. It feels really hostile down there compared to when we first moved in. The neighbors can't talk to each other out in their yards. You can't hear each other. Traffic is just going so fast. It's going so fast. And I think we just need some help with the speeders. I really do. I think maybe it would kind of make things not feel so aggressive and hostile down there, you know? Maybe that's it. Maybe we're afraid the trucks will get bigger. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but yeah, just, and plus, I don't think any of us want to deal with any retribution either. And we know what happens in these small towns, and I had to deal with it too, with the situation with the motorcycle, with that guy, and it still flares up. And you piss off the wrong people in this town who have a lot of connections and family, then you're going to have to deal with what I have to deal with people going by and revving their engines and, like I said, it's turned into a very hostile area down there, and we need some help from the cops.
Very good. Thank you for your comments. Are there any additional citizen comments this evening on agenda items? One last call for those of you who are in the audience.
All I want to do is, if you decide to pass this tonight, can you make it conditional, like a 6-month or a year evaluation? Because there is a lot of concerns, and that might possibly, I don't even know if it's a possibility.
Thank you, Mrs. Hess. No additional comments from those in the audience? Then I'm going to defer to the city clerk. I believe we have at least 2 written comments in which the individuals wanted their remarks read at this time. Is that correct?
I have 3, but
3,
yes.
okay. Please begin. I'll time you.
The first one is from Mike, Sarah, and Lachlan Rocket. It says, I saw that there will be a discussion around removing the weight restriction on South Ann Arbor Street in Saline at the May 20th, 2024 meeting. I am unable to attend the meeting due to travel, but would like my voice my and my family's strong opposition to this proposal. We live at 211 South Ann Arbor Street and have a 4-year-old son who loves to play outside. Allowing a constant stream of trucks to travel up and down South Ann Arbor Street will greatly degrade our quality of living. The noise, the smog, the road congestion, and the road wear will all be significant negatives and likely prevent us from playing and enjoying outside. Building our community through friendly discussions on sidewalks or just even getting a good night's sleep. The din of the road has already greatly increased over the last few years, and we do not want more traffic. Please do not lift the weight limits on South Ann Arbor Road. It will reduce our home's value. Thank you.
Good. Okay.
The next one is from David Miller. It says, I am writing to express my concerns about GOTS Transit Mix Company's request to remove or exempt the current weight restrictions on South Ann Arbor Street within Saline. I strongly oppose this change. Below are a few of my reasons for opposition. Vehicles above a certain weight cause road and infrastructure damage. This is why the restrictions are in place now. Traffic is already bad on South Ann Arbor Street. Often, northbound traffic will fill the space between Henry Street and Michigan Ave to the extent that it takes more than one traffic light cycle to get on or through Michigan Ave. This gets worse due to the northbound traffic backing up south of Henry Street at the stop sign. I have seen backups all the way to Pleasant Ridge Drive. Simply adding more vehicles will inflate this issue. Adding large, heavy vehicles which accelerate more slowly will make this problem even worse. Pollution is also a problem. Having diesel-fueled vehicles simply driving through Saline will add to the pollution within the city. Adding that these vehicles will frequently need to stop at the traffic light at Crestwood and Michigan Ave, along with stopping at the Henry Street stop sign, will mean that they will be idling and spewing even more air pollution into the air. Children's safety should also be considered. Pleasant Ridge School is 2 blocks away from South Ann Arbor Street. Many children cross the street at the Crestwood light. This intersection has not had a crossing guard to assist students for the last few years. Adding traffic will impact their safety. My house was built in 1864. It has little noise reduction material, and the noise is currently allowed large vehicles is tremendous. These vehicles also cause the house to shake. I can hardly imagine what it would be like with larger, heavier vehicles passing by my house and along with more volume. A few times a year, I receive information for insurance to cover the pipe to the road from the house, most claiming to be approved by the city of Saline. They state that the type and age of the pipes make them subject to damage, resulting in very expensive repairs. Additional large, heavy trucks with the vibrations that result will clearly increase the possibility of damage to these pipes. If the City Council allows the restrictions to be removed or provides an exception, I am asking that the historic designation be removed from South Ann Arbor Street. This would allow homeowners to make modifications to reduce noise and other concerns to their home. These changes would not be allowed as long as the historic designation remains in place. Thank you.
Very good. And then there's one additional comment you said?
Yes, and this is regarding item 2497, the Downtown Social District.
Very good.
Dear council and staff, this letter is written as representation of the business ownership of Bruck and Grill, Max, Salt Springs Brewery, and Dan's Downtown Tavern. We are all in agreement that the proposed social district should include all of our downtown active license holders and not just the south side of Michigan Ave. After the extensive effort and time that has been put forth, our opinion is as follows. All the active downtown license holders should be able to participate in the Saline Social District, or none of the active licenses holders will participate. We will not divide our downtown anymore as of north and south. After communication with our contacts at MLCC, it is acceptable and allowed for the social district to cross Michigan Ave. It is up to the city to designate the boundaries of the social district and designate where you can and where you cannot consume within the district, and the liability enforcement falls on the city of Saline. The social district proposal designating only the south side of Michigan Ave was not initiated or the actions of the south side license holders. The establishment of a social district that includes the whole downtown is a positive step forward to our city. It will help unite our businesses and help fix the great divide that exists due to Michigan Ave. Please support this initiative and allow the city and Saline Main Street to work collaboratively with stakeholders and license holders to ensure the successful implementation of the Saline Social District.
Very good. And that exhausts our public comments for this evening?
Yes.
Okay, we appreciate all of you who voiced your concerns and questions at the dais and those who provided written statements. We will address both the social district, the proposed social district, and traffic on Ann Arbor Street under new business, items 24-96 and items 24-98 respectively. If there's nothing further under the public comment portion of tonight's agenda, we will proceed to our one and only presentation, which is an annual update from Phil Santer at Ann Arbor Spark. Phil, we welcome you here. Thank you for your patience. I would ask, we do have a rather substantive agenda tonight, so if you could keep your presentation to about 5-10 minutes, that would be fantastic, and then we'll do a round of questions from my council colleagues.
Thank you for that, and I appreciate the time. I started my 5-minute timer, and I'm going to do my best to get under since I think that's how agenda. So, good evening, everyone. My name is Phil Santor, and I'm Chief of Staff at Ann Arbor Spark. If you're not familiar, Ann Arbor Spark is a regional nonprofit organization dedicated to increasing economic activity throughout the region, which should work throughout Washtenaw and Livingston counties. We provide resources, I should say, we are fortunate to work with the City of Saline as partners in economic development for many years. We work closely with city staff, including Ben Harrington, Colleen O'Toole, Mayor Marl, to support business attraction, expansion, and retention in the city. We provide numerous resources like feasibility studies, economic and labor market data analysis, connections to regional, state, and national partners. And in the past, I think we've provided semi-annual reports to Saline's Economic Development Corporation, but I think this is now an appropriate time to provide an update to City Council as a whole, so I appreciate the opportunity. So I'm really here just to walk through the report that was included in your materials. It's an annual impact report, which is in your packets. It outlines our strategic priorities for the region, as well as our specific activity in Saline. So on the business engagement side, which are detailed in the report, we have our retention call program, the number of referrals that we've made to businesses here, and our support for small businesses during the pandemic. Our efforts in Saline have resulted in millions of dollars in new capital investment and over 400 new job commitments. And we've submitted over 37 addresses for business expansion or attraction. And companies in Saline have received 7 Going Pro Talent Fund Awards, which is a workforce development training program provided by Michigan Work Southeast. So we currently have a fairly robust pipeline and agenda. We have 62 ongoing projects that could result in significant capital investment, including in Saline. And these projects span various industries that I can get into if you're interested. We are actively engaged in talent engagement, events, marketing the region as a destination for business development. And we're also addressing, I think, issues that I'm really passionate about and excited to work on more, including things like housing challenges and advocating for policies to support the child care field. A couple of weeks ago, actually in this room, we hosted a public sector committee meeting where we discussed the overlap of the housing market and land use planning. Ben Harrington presented information on Saline's work in this area, alongside representatives from the City of Ann Arbor and the Michigan Association of Planners. Last week, we also released a report on child care, which highlighted opportunities for land use and zoning changes across Washtenaw County, including Saline. I may be back in coming months to update you on that work in particular. And then additionally, we're working on site readiness funding on Woodland Drive to support potential future development of 1370 Woodland as well. So the impact report showcases our commitment to driving smart economic growth in Saline and the Ann Arbor region, and our efforts in business development marketing have resulted in significant investments. We appreciate the partnership with Saline, and I'm happy to address any questions you may have. And if not, I encourage you to review the report in your packets and contact me with any questions that may arise.
That was very thorough, but also very brief. We appreciate that. One quick question. I'm actually looking for sort of a yes or no answer here, because it wouldn't be germane or appropriate to get into the specifics, especially since negotiations are ongoing. But I'm assuming you or your colleagues have been engaged with the recently vacant flat-out facility, and hopefully have been privy to some of the conversations about the potential acquisition of that site by another corporate entity.
Correct.
Very good. Well, keep us posted. If there's anything that staff can do to assist, we would be more than amenable to do so. Okay. Following the same order of questions that we used at tonight's work meeting, I'll begin with Gearbaugh and end with Dillon. Mr. Gearbaugh, any questions for our guests from Ann Arbor Spark?
Just a couple. On page 5, where you talk about Ann Arbor's Spark engagement in the city of Saline, what time period is that over? Because you mentioned $128 million of new capital investment. I got to believe that's not just 2024, because if it was, we'd be really happy.
Based on this report, which used to go to the EDC, we did that on a semi-annual basis. I think we usually provide annual numbers. In this case, because we're wanting to orient everyone to the work that we've been doing over the years, I think this is inclusive of going back to 2011.
And one of the things, we've had 2 issues that have coming up. You know, part of our issue is downtown business and retail and all of that. How is Spark helping communities, not only us, but other ones around here, in terms of re-identifying and figuring out how to solve some of these problems?
Yeah, it's actually, well, okay, I'm trying to be brief, but I have some things to say related to that. And in particular, I think given what happened during the pandemic and the companies that were affected the most by the pandemic were oftentimes not the ones that were particularly engaged from an economic development perspective. We've been working with manufacturers or other companies that were large entities. The companies that were most affected by the pandemic often were small. So we've actually started working with Washtenaw County, and now we've actually received a program from the state of Michigan to focus in particular on small businesses that maybe were affected by that pandemic, or trying to bring in some of these services that we've often provided to technology companies to those types of businesses. And I think there's applicability that could go to actually delve into that program in particular. I'd be happy to share more information on that because we actually just launched that program in the past month. So there's more to say on that. I would love to have or ensure that Saline area businesses were taking advantage of that.
Yeah, we'd enjoy that, because part of that would be helpful with a new proposal that we're proposing for grants and helping in terms of new businesses when they're doing designs and offsetting architectural fees and things like that, but also in the development of CDRs, commercial redevelopment zones, and whatever else that we're doing. So we want to give a whole package as much as we can, so that'd be helpful. And then lastly, you've done your retention visits and met with our different industries and businesses. What's their number one concern now, and is there anything that we as a community should be doing to help them?
For the longest time, a major concern has been access to talent. That's been the most consistent thing that we've heard across the different businesses. I think some of the dynamics have changed a little bit now where I think given the cost of capital, where there's been an amount, if you're going to take on debt, it's going to be at a different level than it has been before. I think that's adjusting some of the conversations that folks are having. And in some ways, there's also been adjustments in the labor market where it's not easier necessarily to find talent, but it's maybe marginally easier to find folks. So that conversation is a little bit secondary to some of the other things. So it really depends on the individual that we're talking to in terms of what those concerns are. I do have some data because we have some key economic indicators that we ask all the companies that we call on. And we actually just did a trend line over the past 4 years where I'd be happy to add that analysis as well if you're interested.
Yeah, especially, but no red flags or anything directly that we could improve upon.
Everyone has been sort of waiting on the sidelines to be able to invest. I think we were frankly hoping that there was going to maybe be some reductions in our Fed rate this year that was going to encourage folks to get off the sidelines and invest a little bit more, at least from a big business perspective. That hasn't necessarily occurred yet. So I think that might be one of the red flags that might be happening.
We do know that Lee Bear's expansion, so hopefully we've got that going for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gearbaugh. Councilmember Rice, any questions for our guest?
Just a couple. So I appreciate your initiatives to focus on things that might set folks back, like public sector housing, childcare, things like that. What other types of initiatives do you have to bring in more diverse portfolios of, we're very, in the Ann Arbor area is very high tech, very light manufacturing. Are there any other diverse entities, segments that we aren't hitting here that we should be looking toward bringing into this area?
I view that, I've always looked at sort of thinking about it from a Washtenaw County perspective, right? We're like a eds and meds plus sort of town, right? So we've got our major economic impact folks, which are based on from the university sector. I think they get caught up in sort of state government area. We have obviously a really large medical component, and then we have this really, from my perspective, actually from an economic development lens is you want to try and do cluster analysis. You want to try and figure out where you have a group of industries you can sort of lean into and try and grow on. And sometimes that's actually difficult in our region because we have such a diverse set of industries that we're trying to work towards. I think if you're looking at sort of economic diversification and areas that we can try and lean into, for us it's really been a matter of sort of niches, right? So we're looking at the mobility space and how can we continue to lead in automotive research and development, knowing that there's going to be future advances in that area. And really that's a statewide issue where we can say how can we be more of a mobility state and recognizing there is much R&D as possible. So I don't know if you have a particular industry that you want to try and address, but there's lots of different efforts.
One of the things that I was thinking about is the fact that we have a very skilled industry around here, more so skilled than the trade industries. And I know there's a lot of initiatives about going to trade schools and things like that. The governor's put forth, and just sort of working a little bit more towards that aspect and bringing in more diverse skill sets, which would also then bring in more diverse socioeconomic backgrounds, things like that.
So two things I'll note. One is that in the report there is an overview of an economic forecast that we partner with the University of Michigan on. I would encourage you to maybe look at the report itself because there's a really interesting graph that shows the rebound since the pandemic, and it's broken out by higher wage positions, by blue-collar folks, and by service levels. And what's been interesting to see is how long that rebound has come. And actually, we're just now in this quarter expected to meet sort of the pre-pandemic employment levels that we've been at across all of those different industries. So that's one piece of information that I would point you to look at. The other part that makes me think about that I don't think it was mentioned in our report, but we've been working and partnering mainly with Toyota on something called the FAME program, which is essentially a Kettering-style program, but for advanced technicians to try and increase the amount of folks that are interested in doing sort of trade level work, but within various companies. So a company can sponsor an employee. They go part-time working at their company, part-time working at or studying at WCC, and sort of they emerge with a job and a really interesting skill set. It's been we've gained a lot of traction within companies around the area trying to go through that. So we're really excited about that as well. So I can send you more information on that as well.
Yeah, that's great. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
That's awesome.
Thank you, Councilmember Rice. Councilmember Harmount, any questions for our guests from Ann Arbor Spark?
Yeah, I see that on page 7, it says advocating for local policies to make it easier for providers to open and expand programs. What, in your opinion, is maybe a policy that's standing in the way of us progressing in that area?
So I mentioned in my opening remarks, and this is particular child care, correct? This is the,
yeah.
Yeah, so I think we've spent about a year doing a study related to that. And we received a grant in order to focus on this issue. And one of the areas that came up was just that there seems to be inconsistent land use and zoning language across the community. So one of the things that we feel like is actionable, it's not going to solve the child care crisis by any means, but one of the things that we think is actionable is just trying to have is consistent language as it relates to child care services across Washtenaw County. So if we could have sort of a similar zoning language, for example, it would be easier for child care facilities to know and have some certainty when they're going into a new market about what they're going to have to go through from a zoning perspective or from a land use perspective. So that's kind of pulling on that thread.
Any other policies you would target outside of child care?
So this was in particular related to child care from that aspect. There's so much to pull on. I mean, that could be another certainly larger conversation related to that. But we did publish that full report, like I mentioned last week. So that's 140 pages of goodness around the child care industry in our backyard that will go into greater depth if you're interested in that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Harmount. Councilmember Lesh, any questions for our guests from Ann Arbor Spark?
Just one comment, that as a former Pfizer employee, and when the Pfizer facility shut down in Ann Arbor, that was kind of the early days of Ann Arbor Spark, and you came in and did a tremendous job in Ann Arbor, and I am just thrilled to see you guys expanding your reach out to all of the different communities around the county, so kudos to you guys.
Thank you, Councilmember Lesh. Councilmember Seo, questions or comments for our guest?
Just a comment for the sake of brevity, just want to thank you guys for the work you do.
Good. And Mayor Pro Tem Dillon.
Thank you. My only question for you is, I know that in our community, one huge barrier is transportation, and that's a workforce issue. And so is there a way in which Ann Arbor Spark can help us to leverage relations with transportation companies in which we can start doing that? Because I know that is one of the biggest asks of our manufacturers.
I certainly think about, thinking about the other sort of community drivers that I talked about, one being sort of childcare, another one being related to the housing discussion. I think transportation sort of is the trifecta component for that. I think there are some interesting opportunities that might be able to emerge. And so, an example, working in Livingston County, we were able to set up a transportation option there where we were essentially connecting employees in Flint with opportunities that were happening in Livingston County. And that was a partnership that was possible basically through those businesses and through the transportation service in Genesee County. So there might be opportunities related to that, but I know it is absolutely a challenge. And frankly, I think that's one area where we could do a much bigger dive into that particular area and see if there's some actions that we could take in it.
Thank you very much. And then my other last comment was just building upon what Councilmember Rice had mentioned and what you had mentioned about sort of those trade work study programs. I believe that Saline area schools through their South and West Washtenaw Consortium does have those kind of programs. And so expanding upon them and sort of expanding upon the businesses that recruit from those, I think, is a phenomenal partnership.
I would agree, and conversation we've also been having related to the ISD is really trying to think around career and technical education, or CTE, and sort of reimagining that for the entire region, because personally I'm a big advocate of experiential learning where you actually engage, you learn what you do and then you try and apply it. I think that's just a really compelling way for everyone, not just segmented towards folks that might be going into the trades, but it really should be for folks that are going to college or for other careers. And I know there's people passionate within the ISD. Ryan Rowe, who I know has been active in the community as well, is really passionate about trying to expand on that. We've been sort of having some conversations around ways that we can try and do that countywide.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Dillon. Bill, anything else you'd like to add before we excuse you?
I feel like I've said my piece. Thank you.
You said a lot, and we appreciate that. Thank you for your continued efforts, and please extend those thanks to your colleagues at Ann Arbor Spark as well.
Thank you very
Appreciate your time this evening. Have a great night. Friends, we're going to proceed to the consent agenda. The following consent agenda will normally be adopted without discussion. However, at the request of any citizen or council member, any item may be removed from the consent agenda for council discussion.
Your Honor,
Yes.
may I please pull 2493?
2493 is...
Charitable gaming license for Sparrows Place.
Oh, that was taken out.
Yep, that was...
Was taken out?
Yep.
Okay.
Amended one. Yep.
Would you like to move then to approve the...
I'm sorry. Would I be able to, then I'd like to remove 24-96 waste management contract extension, just for conversation.
Okay, so that'll appear as the first item under new business. Would you like to move then to approve the consent agenda as amended?
Yes.
Okay, is there a second? Seconded by Gearbaugh. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda as amended signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. The motion carries unanimously. We move on to public hearing. Agenda item 94-95, fiscal year 24 General Appropriations Act. This is our proposed budget. The first motion will be a motion to open the public hearing at 7:49, affording anyone from the public the ability to speak to the proposed budget for the upcoming fiscal year.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Lesh, seconded by Gearbaugh. All those in favor of opening the public hearing at, again, 7:49 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Public hearing is now open. Is there anyone who wishes to speak to this issue?
Seeing none, I move to close.
Moved by Gearbaugh to close the public hearing at 7:50. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by, oh boy, I'm going to go with Rice on that one. I'll get Dillon and Lesh on the next one. All those in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Public hearing is now closed. The subsequent motion will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the May 14th, 2024 memo from Deputy Treasurer McDonough regarding the General Appropriations Act budget for fiscal year 24, and to approve or not to approve resolution number 2494 as submitted adopting the General Appropriations Act budget for fiscal year 24-25, providing for a general operating millage of 13.7693 mils, including a portion of the funding required for fire protection, refuge millage in the amount of 1.9860 mils, street millage of 1 mil, and fire special assessment of 1 mil.
Move to acknowledge and approve.
Moved by Lesh to acknowledge and to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Seal. Treasurer Cole, do you want to make some obligatory remarks for the record? And as you and I discussed immediately preceding tonight's meeting, generally the motion that we consider ends with a statement to the effect of similar to the previous fiscal year. Can you elaborate primarily for the public's benefit why the dollar amounts we are proposing this evening do not identically mirror the previous fiscal year?
Absolutely. So the Headley Act of 1978 limits the amount of tax growth that the city can have, and it was reduced by 0.9931 this year, reducing our operational millage and taxes from 13.86 to the 13.7693.
So there's actually, for the public's benefit, there's a reduction from the previous year. Very good.
There is a reduction in public year. I would like to thank all of you this evening, community members, stakeholders, council members. I wanted to say thank you so much for being here tonight and considering the adoption of this budget. As we sit here today, we've gone through many months of hard work on this budget and lots of review time spent with you, so we certainly appreciate that. I want to send a special thank you to our city manager, O'Toole. Without her guidance, this budget certainly would not be the wonderful product that it is. And to our department heads who certainly, without them, we couldn't do what we do. So without their information and them making us good, we certainly wouldn't be here today. And then also to the finance staff, especially Joanna McDonough. This is her last budget with the city of Saline. She is retiring, so I want to send a special thank you to her for all the work she's done throughout all the years on many city of Saline budgets. Then I just wanted to also say that as far as the differences between the last budget that you saw, and the one today, we only have two major changes, and one is we recorded the SRF loan that was closed, and so that is for the West Belt project, totaling a $1.4 million increase, and it was budgeted for 40.5, and now it is at 41.9. The other difference was exactly what we just talked about with the Headley Act, how our millage was reduced, therefore our tax revenue was reduced.
Very good. Appreciate that. And thank you for your comments about the amount of time that staff, administration, and council has invested in this issue over the past several months. Everyone worked hard, and I think we have crafted a good product that will serve this community well for the subsequent fiscal year, which begins in about a month's time. Very good. Are there questions or comments for the city treasurer or city administration? No? Okay, then we're going to proceed to vote. We do have a motion on the floor moved by Lesh, seconded by CO, to acknowledge and to approve the budget. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it. The motion carries unanimously. Thank you all. Thank you, Treasurer Cole. We're going to move on to new business, and first up is the item that was removed from the consent agenda, which is agenda item 2496, waste management contract extension. This will be a motion to approve the extension of waste management contract through September 30th, 2025.
Move to approve.
Moved by Gearbout to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by CO. Mayor Pro Tem Dillon, I believe you had a question, comment, or concern.
I do. Thank you very much. Regarding this contract, obviously, we're extending it because our WARMA agreement has not fallen into place yet. At what point do we expect that to? I know that this is a 15-month extension. Do we expect it's going to take at least 15 months?
We're very hopeful that they'll have everything in place before 15 months, but we are extending to the period of time that the majority of other WARMA members are already set to expire, so that a larger group of communities can enter into the contract at the same time. We heard back from the service providers that was a huge risk for them, not knowing how many people would be coming over at one specific time. So this strengthens the bid process that they'll go through again now in terms of being able to say a number of communities with specific amount of population participating.
Okay, so we're confident. It just seems as though this WARMA project has extended way beyond what we thought it was going to be. We've now been in contract with them for several years, and obviously it was creating a new entity, but I want to make sure it's not to the detriment of the city, that we're doing short-term contracts with our current waste management company in waiting for the new thing to come about. And so understanding, is that actually going to come to fruition, and what is it going to look like for the city?
I think they were really close to the finish line with this one. It was really just a matter of timing. The city of Saline, in this case, was, if things had continued to get pushed through, would have been the first to go through the process. That was a huge risk for us. That was a huge risk for the service providers. The final negotiations on the contract really never came to fruition in a sufficient amount of time for us to get through our budgeting process. Under the current structure, I feel a lot more confident that the right pieces are in place. The Warma community members are all very much on the same page in terms of the scope of services they want to offer, and ultimately in roughly 15 months' time, we'll be able to present to the community likely a service that is comparable in price, but with a much richer service experience.
Thank you for that. And then I guess I think that this gives us an opportunity, we have 15 months now, to do some kind of look back at what services we actually need. And I'm going to say something that may not be the most, well received, which is I really feel as though this city needs to revisit recycling. I think we are overzealous recyclers, myself included. We put a lot into those recycle bins, and we pay a premium to recycle. And we need to do a better job of educating people as to what should be in those bins and what should just go into regular trash. We should be looking at, and I've said this repeatedly, we have way too many trash cans in our city parks. Right now, I watch on a regular basis people from outside of our community putting their trash into our trash containers, which we are paying for by weight. And so I just want to understand that. I think that there is an opportunity that we really do need to look at some of these things. And I also want to understand what our relationship is with the schools. I know we were partnering with them on trash at one point, but we were charging them a flat fee, and it was not tied to the weight issue. And has that actually been corrected, and understanding that? So I just want to make sure that I think that we do now have, because we have this window, that we take full advantage of it and really look clearly as to what our future needs are.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions or comments? Mr. Gearbaugh and then Councilmember Rice.
I just want to thank the city manager for continuing to follow up on this. We did know when we first initially were looking into this 3 or 4 years ago, this whole coordination of everybody being on board was going to be a concern. And I think at this point, this is the way to get full commitment to it and making sure that somebody doesn't drop out at the last minute. But the other aspect, I believe recycling was a major component of this in terms of determining is there a better function. I agree with Mayor Pro Tem Dillon that we have put a lot into recycling, and we're not sure where that recycling is ending up in the end game. But I appreciate this, and I'm hoping that we can resolve this going forward. And also, as you mentioned, there are other services that we continue to do that we will need to resolve in terms of how we handle yard waste and other aspects. So appreciate what you're doing on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Rice.
My council colleagues just covered what I was going to talk about, but I will add one more thing, and it's composting. If we could look into composting service within the city of Saline. But I agree on looking at a better solution for recycling, as well as yard waste to include fall leaf cleanup, to see how we can help DPW during those times. Thanks.
Very good. Any additional questions or comments?
I want to say I support this as a move to harmonize a stronger future for waste management here in Saline, including composting and community composting. And I love the idea that we're going to be diverting that out of landfill. So thank you for your efforts.
Very good. Thank you all. There's a motion on the floor moved by Gearbaugh, seconded by CO to approve the extension. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it. The motion carries unanimously. We move on to new business item 24-97, Downtown Social District. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the memo from Director Harrington and to approve or not to approve the Downtown Saline Social District in accordance with the maintenance and operational plan.
Move to acknowledge.
Moved by moved by Dillon simply to acknowledge, and it was seconded by Gearbaugh. City Manager O'Toole, are you kicking this off, or am I deferring immediately to Mr. Harrington?
I'll allow Mr. Harrington to talk about the operations plan and map.
Okay. Awesome. Then I'll jump to you, excuse me, Mr. Harrington, then I'll jump to you, and then if our representatives from Saline Main Street, either the executive director or board chair, would like to make a comment, I would welcome that as well.
Perfect. So to keep it very high level, in 2020, the state of Michigan allowed cities to create social districts, which are places where qualified licensees or businesses with liquor license could sell a 16-ounce or smaller beverage in a specially marked cup to folks to take out of their business and walk into a commons area as defined by any individual municipality. So it's colloquially what we know as a social district. The proposal from the city is the area between East Michigan Avenue or Michigan Avenue and Henry Street on South Ann Arbor Street as the primary commons area, both sidewalks, as well as Leather Bucket Alley, which runs behind Brecken Grill, what will soon be Drop Top Pizza, White Pine Studios, and Benny's Bakery on the end. That would be open daily from 3 p.m. to 10 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and then from Friday and to Sunday, 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. To accommodate for weekend festivities for folks who want to carry out during the regular nights. On Thursday night and Saturday morning, Thursday night is when Salty Summer Sounds is, and Saturday morning when the farmers market occurs, the district will have the inclusion of that West Henry parking lot as well for viewing the music, for walking around the farmers market. We have spoken with many stakeholders throughout this process. This is probably our third or fourth iteration working towards compromise with various restaurants and other stakeholders in our downtown area. As was mentioned in a public comment, the operations and maintenance falls on the city for that commons area. The liability falls on the city for that commons area. So that's all within the city scope. The restaurants are simply selling the alcohol out into the commons area.
Very good. City Manager O'Toole.
So one thing I would like to clarify is there is a very distinct difference between a social district and a commons area. They are not one and the same. And at the risk of boring everyone, I will take a moment to read from the Michigan legislator, MCL 436.1551A8A. Commons area means an area within a social district clearly designated and clearly marked by the governing body of the local governmental unit that is shared by and contiguous to the premise of at least 2 other qualified licensees, meaning you have to have at least 2 licensees connected by a commons area. This is an issue that staff explored when recommending the current setup of the social district and the reason why you do not see the social district crossing Michigan Avenue. A social district and a commons area are different things. There is no contiguous commons area that we can accommodate on the north side of Michigan Avenue.
Thank you. Let me defer to our Executive Director and Board Chair of Saline Main Street. Would you like to make any comments at this time? We welcome you to the podium, Mary. Make sure the green light is illuminated at the base of the microphone.
All right, thank you. Thank you for having me. Yes, we have put in a lot of time trying to come up with a solution for this. And while we completely disagree on the actual interpretation of that law, crossing Michigan Ave, it does happen, or crossing US 12 does happen in other communities without contiguous businesses on the other side. We understand also that this was a compromise that was created to start the process. We do very much want this to move forward, and it, you know, we understand the business's position, although it was kind of brought up very, very suddenly this morning, unfortunately. But we also support, you know, where council is at as well. This is something new to our community, and while we would love to see this happen and encompass all businesses in downtown, we also understand that doing anything will make a big difference for downtown. So that's where we stand, and yeah, hopefully in the future, if you pass this portion of it, hopefully in the future we can look at more distinctly at other communities that do cross Michigan Ave or US 12 rather, and see how they do that without having a business on the other side. So
very good. Thank you for that. Hang tight in the event that there are questions that are best addressed by you. I suspect everyone is going to have some questions and likely some comments on this particular issue, so we're going to follow the order that was previously established for this evening, beginning with Gearbaugh, ending with Mayor Pro Tem Dillon. I would remind my colleagues that at the moment we're just dealing with the acknowledgement of receipt of a memo from Mr. Harrington. So right now we're going to limit it to questions to either the Community Development Director, City Manager, or Main Street Director regarding either the process or the proposal that will be before you in the subsequent motion. Mr. Gearbaugh.
Thank you. Mary and Jill and I have all talked, and we've gone back and forth today. There were some concerns that related to a email that we received today about an ultimatum of either everyone was in or no one's in. And I believe that moving forward, our approach and what you presented and working with our staff, because this has gone back and forth, achieves what initially what we want to do as a pilot and making sure that we can start a social district downtown. So from that perspective, I'm in support of this, just want to make that statement. The only concerns I have, and I know that has come up, is we talked about US 12, and it seems like US 12, because it is a state highway, does not allow alcohol on it, and that is clearly in the MCL. Michigan Commission of Liquor, or whatever, Liquor Commission, whatever, that we can't do that. And I do know there's been communications about, well, you may be able to walk across. Well, I want to take the least confrontational aspect that we have and follow the law until we can get clarification. In fact, I'd love to have a Michigan Liquor Commissioner here to answer this, but at this point, we know that we all have it clear that there has to be two businesses on the north side based on the way we're approaching it, and we don't have that at this point. I do believe that that business does have a open area to which they currently provide outside service and have that ability. We're not taking that away from them. It's going to continue. I think the other part of it, it's going to work well. The only other question I had is based on hours. I do know we talked about hours going back and forth, and my only concern was why we would have hours before the business is actually open in terms of what we currently know are the operating hours uptown. And maybe that's been addressed.
Yeah, absolutely. So essentially, the city establishes the social district. It's up to the qualified licensees to choose whether or not to participate, not only whether to get the license, but what hours they would like to participate in the district. There was some conversation, again, this originally started as a Thursday night only thing, and then through extensive conversations with businesses, we grew it and grew it and grew it. And two, one of the points that they had asked for was including the farmer's market so that they could sell potentially a Bloody Mary into folks walking into the farmer's market. Even though they're not currently offering those hours, we thought that it would be appropriate to provide that opportunity to them to ensure that they could capture that segment of consumer, resident, whatever classification you want to use, to provide in that time period. So that's why 9 a.m. was included, even though most of our restaurants downtown do not open until 11 or later.
And again, this is a volunteer. Any of these businesses can participate or not participate in terms of this request. It's not that they have to participate, but two of them do, don't they?
Right, so it's required that two participate in order for it to be viable or for it to be admissible, but correct, none of them have to, none of them are compelled to.
And with that, we've been talking about this for 4 years. This is my goal, was to have a group in a social district in a common area that wasn't restrictive to certain individuals and going back and forth. So unfortunately, we can't go across Michigan Avenue, but at this point, you all feel what you've achieved is enforceable, is something that our police officers, our chief, our fire chief are all comfortable with at this point. 'Cause all
Yes,
those parties
at this
have been
point,
involved.
staff believes what is presented is comfortable. I would say probably the only open question at this point is we left a little bit of a vague language in the operations policy to allow my office to designate other times that the district could be closed. So I would look for council consideration if you wanted it to be closed during other special events like Summerfest or Oktoberfest. But other than that,
We had talked about that, the consideration that might be a bigger and more problem enforcement when you have 5,000 people downtown versus a couple,
to know where the cups,
to know where everything's coming from. Okay, thank you.
And I would just add that both the fire chief and the police chief submitted memos that were part of your packet expressing acceptance, support for this proposal.
Thank you.
Very good, thank you, Mr. Gerba. Councilmember Rice, questions for city staff or our guests from Saline Main Street?
So, back in the day when we could first start doing to-go drinks, I could grab a to-go drink at Smokehouse 52, and I could walk back to my house on North Ann Arbor Street, crossing Michigan Avenue. Is that no longer still in place?
no, you are absolutely allowed to walk with a closed container anywhere you want. It's
So
open
if I were
container.
to order a drink from Dan's, I could not walk across Michigan Avenue and consume it in the confines of the social district.
Correct. The way that we have read the commons area is that it has to be contiguous between licensees. There's no contiguous licensee on the north side. If you look at other communities like Coldwater, they've designated a social district that has two commons areas. Those commons areas are both on the north and the south side of the street. You are not allowed to consume crossing the road.
Gotcha. So for the sake of wanting to get a social district put into place, I'm all for the plan that's drawn up. However, I would like to continue to investigate Merchant Square. That would be a contiguous area that you could cross?
There needs to be two licensees. The problem is there's only one licensee on the north side of the street.
They have to be on the same side of the street, the
They have to be, you have to create a commons area that is contiguous between two or more licensees.
So do you know how they did that in Coldwater? Because on the north side of US 12, there are no businesses, right? There are no establishments.
Yes, there are, because if I looked at the map today, they have one on their front page, and then they have one down further into the document, and there's like 2 or 3 businesses on the north side.
Okay, because I'm looking at the one on their,
Go into their business development one, and it shows a different.
Yeah, I went to the one on their Coldwater Social District page, and I also received a letter from Audrey, who is the executive director of the Coldwater Main Street and the DDA director, and the map she sent me shows 4 establishments on the south side of US 12, and that's the extent of it.
And they have conflicting information.
I have their website up if you'd like to.
I do too.
Okay, cool.
So just to let you know, if you drill down on the business development portion, it shows businesses on both sides.
Okay.
So when they, depends on when they created that district, whether they're in compliance with it.
So if I could,
Please continue, Councilmember
Thank
Rice. Can I stop you real quick? Oh, okay, the noise is.
oh, yeah, I don't know what that is. So again, I would like for this social district to continue. I understand the issues of the business owners. I would like to continue to work out a solution, but if we are hearing that legally there is not a solution, then I'm begging business owners to continue to want to participate in this and provide this service, and perhaps the city can find another way to include our establishment on the north side in some sort of capacity. You can talk at the end of the public meeting, unfortunately. So that's just what I'm saying here, because we've been talking about this for a long time, and I saw all of these maps, and like you said, this is sort of a last-minute issue. I do not want to hold this up because of that, but I'm strongly suggesting we continue to try to figure out how to incorporate the north businesses.
I agree 100% in that, and I do not want to hold this up.
Yep.
By this part of it, because I do want to see something happen. I would like some more clarification in the future because of what I'm hearing and what you're all hearing is so very different. So we need to figure that out so that we can include all of our businesses to the best of our abilities and support the entire downtown.
So my question for the city manager and for community development director is, if we do this now, can we adjust it when
Absolutely.
if we receive any additional information?
Yes, and in the meantime, I'll have a formal legal opinion written.
I appreciate that. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Rice. Councilmember Harmount, any questions for our guests from Saline Main Street or from city staff?
No, the only question I had is about Salty Summer Sounds. So that's typically on North and South Ann Arbor. It's only going to be on.
This year, we're having it in the West Henry Park.
So right there, right off of South Ann Arbor.
I feel the same way as the rest of my colleagues. I don't have anything further to say.
Thank you, Councilmember Harmount. Councilmember Lesh?
And I would go along with my colleagues also. I mean, we need to get it going, and, we'll just keep the ball rolling, and hopefully it'll work out.
Thank you. Councilmember Seal?
I agree. I think that we need to take the first baby step forward to get this thing moving. And in the meantime, consult with our attorneys to see if there is an alternate interpretation to this that would allow for the inclusion of the north side at some future date.
Thank you, sir. Mayor Pro Tem Dillon?
Thank you. So I guess just to clarify, because we have 3 different pieces going on right now, are we, if the businesses are saying it's an all or nothing thing, are we wasting our time setting this up if they're not going to participate? Because we've put a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of money into getting to this point. So I want to understand, if we set this up, are they going to participate? Because there's no point in doing this and saying, hey, Saline's got a social district, but nobody signed up to be a part of it. So I guess I want clarification here and now before we vote. If it's an all or nothing and it means nothing is going to happen, then I don't see why this body should be moving forward at this point. So I guess that's my thing right now, is trying to understand, if there's a line drawn in the sand, then there's a line drawn in the sand.
Well, I understand your frustration completely. This is something that I can't give you clarity on at this point in time. What I would hope to see is that council brings the opportunity to start this, because we need this in downtown, not only just for the community itself. It provides economic development. It provides an opportunity to bring more people into downtown. It provides a draw for young professionals coming in from outside of town. It helps us compete with every single other city in the area, or small city and small town in the area as well. And I think that is a huge, important step for Saline to take. So providing the opportunity for the businesses to participate with the possibility of researching more and hopefully eventually finding a solution to include North Ann Arbor, I think that has to be the first step.
Mayor, I'm going to pause for a second. Mr. Goodman, is there a way that you can come out here and adjust whatever equipment it is that's making this noise?
So is the issue exacerbated when someone pushes or leans on the podium?
It's use of the microphone at all.
Oh, okay.
Can you use the table?
Can we use the tabletop
let's-
microphone and shut the,
Yeah, no, the table doesn't need it. Everybody can come to the podium tonight.
yeah.
It's not that onerous.
I just want to clarify to make sure that people that are listening can hear outside of the meeting.
Is this better? Can you hear me? Is it on?
No, I don't think it's on right now.
Just flip the switch.
How is this? Any better? No.
Yes, we're good.
Should be better. Okay, I just have to get it closer. Okay.
Why don't you just set, yeah, you can set that on the podium, Mary, that's
Yeah.
fine.
Okay.
Or you could just go rock star and hold on.
Either way.
So a couple of questions that I have. The farmer's market aspect, I mean, I love the idea of strolling. You know, that's fine with me. I will say that Chelsea actually carves out in theirs that they don't allow it. They've got open hours that cover their farmer's market, but they've specifically excluded it. So is that something, you know, understanding, you know, every community is going to do things a little different for them. And so I want to make sure, again, that if we're going to put it out that, hey, we're open during the farmer's market, that we actually have businesses that are going to be open. Or conversely, does this open up an opportunity to bring in somebody to the farmer's market if our restaurants don't want to? Would we be able to bring in a vendor?
So to answer your first question, wasn't really a question, I guess, but we have talked to Dana, who runs the farmer's market. She's on board. She's supportive of it. Because of how the law is written, it has to be an existing licensee. They can't open up another storefront or a table to then sell into the district. It has to be a brick and mortar restaurant. The whole policy was really designed to support brick and mortar restaurants. And I'd add that the cost is only $320 to each restaurant to do this, because again, it's meant to be an incentive, a relatively low cost barrier to enter this market, not kind of spur new enterprise.
Okay, I appreciate that. So I do have a couple questions for you about the maps, just so I can kind of understand. When I look at them, and I'm looking at the one which is the Daily Commons map, so anyone that's following along at home, it has the least amount of color on it. What I'm trying to figure out is there is an area, and it's actually carved out on each of the maps, but that's just the first page, which is that walkway next to Max is not identified as part of a commons area. Is that because he already has seating out there?
Yes.
And it's private property.
Okay, but the city does have an easement over it because it's the only handicap access from that side.
Right, I guess the LCC was not clear on how easements specifically play into it. Leather Bucket Alley is somewhat unique because it is city-owned, and we've granted easements the other way. It's kind of the reverse of that alley. But yes, because it is also an outdoor seating area, which you can serve drinks directly into, it is exempt. Again, it's kind of an oddity of the state law itself.
Okay. So when we're talking about areas, I just want to make sure that I'm clarifying. When I look at the Thursday night, Saturday morning one where we're encompassing the parking lots, there is an area of parking behind the residential house that sits on the corner of Henry. Isn't that private property?
No, that's actually all publicly owned. So that the map, the black boundaries on there are all parcel boundaries. So as you can see, it wraps behind it. It is city-owned property. It does have a reversion clause, which is relevant for another conversation we'll probably have here in a couple months. So in theory, if it was used for the purposes of something other than public parking on any sort of permanent basis, so this would not qualify because it's a relatively temporary and transitory activity, then potentially, yes, it'd be an issue, but no, it is, for all intents and purposes, public. Same thing with behind the Med Beauty Aesthetics building. We have title work on that. It's effectively, it's an easement again, but it's effectively the city's property, so.
Okay, because that was actually my next question. So does our easement go all the way to their building?
Yes, yeah, it's a rather cumbersome easement. It's essentially the same language that all the other of our property is under, but again, it was filed more as an easement rather than ownership, but because of the strength and the size and the rights given to the city in that easement, I have far less trepidation about that than I would about the alley in Max, which I believe is just an access easement.
Okay,
Versus the easement behind that building is effectively granting ownership to the city for the purposes of public parking.
okay. And then can we just clarify the times, because the time in the memo and the time on the map don't actually match up. One says 3 o'clock, one says 4 o'clock.
So it is the operations plan is what we'd go with is 3 p.m.
3 PM, okay. And, just 1 second, I'm trying to make sure I hit all my notes on this one. So obviously, we want to see all of our businesses participate. We want to see all of our businesses successful. When we initially looked at this a few years ago, there was the idea that we were crossing Michigan Avenue. Did at that time staff have a different interpretation? And obviously, it may have been different staff. Or is it something that's was overlooked? Is it something that has changed?
So I can answer this because there was a line specifically in the Main Street memo written by Holly Andrews at that time that crossing Michigan Ave was, quote, from some LCC and LLC employee as opening Pandora's box. So it was proposed then to be included, but it seemed even then that there was some confusion over the legality of it. Obviously, other cities have since established social districts too, but beyond the legality of the state, I think the other question too is, we're trying to propose something that we believe as staff we can actually manage and maintain and monitor. And this is me stepping on my soapbox here, but the Christmas tree lighting obviously affects some businesses differently than others downtown. The fact that they are in the downtown area affects some other liquor license holders in the city differently. I think if you were looking to create cosmic justice and make it equal across the board, Stony Lake would be in the conversation, Jalisco would be in the conversation, Paradise. So I think that there's a lot that goes into these types of decisions and negotiations, and I hope the public comment has not downplayed the amount of time and effort staff in Main Street have really put in to come up with something that would work for all parties involved.
No, absolutely, and I appreciate that, and that's why I feel like we're just so close to that finish line, but we haven't quite gotten there yet. So my other question would be about days. I mean, I do have some concern about making sure that that social district is closed during big events. I don't think if, that we've got the staffing to monitor that kind of an area of people meandering through the Commons area during festivals. So I really want to make sure, and I want to look at things like, is it in the best interest to do this during the Christmas parade, during the Memorial Day parade? I want to make sure that we're looking at a lot of these different times and seeing, are we going to have, from a city perspective, are we going to have the resources to monitor this? Because it's going to look a lot different on a Thursday night with a couple hundred people versus a couple of thousand people at a parade. So I guess I want to understand what the city's plan is for that.
I think right now, as the regulations are written, we are permitted to close the district any time that we feel that it is in the health, safety, and welfare of the community. I think you could very easily make a case that any event in which there is an alternative form of alcohol being served would be an instance where it would be difficult for our officers to enforce, where where consumption was coming from, and further, frankly, difficult for the event organizers to delineate between, no, that beverage stays in this circle, and those beverages can't come into this circle. So that would be my recommendation at the very least, any event where the organizers are already planning to serve alcohol. Where it relates to parades or other downtown events, I think that seems to be the nature of why the businesses want a social district in the first place, to capitalize on the Thursday night music series, to capitalize on those moments when there is a larger congregation of people visiting the downtown district. So unless there was something that occurred at one of those events or we had reason to believe that there was a concern, I wouldn't necessarily constitute those as a reason to close the district.
Thank you very much.
Okay, friends, we have a motion on the floor moved by Gearbaugh, seconded by, it was moved by Dillon, seconded by Gearbaugh, to simply acknowledge receipt of the memo from Director Harrington. All those in favor of acknowledging receipt signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, and the motion carries unanimously. Is there a motion now to approve or not to approve the downtown Saline Social District in accordance with the maintenance and operation plan?
Move to approve.
Okay, moved by Gearbaugh to
Second.
approve.
Second.
Oh, boy, everyone wanted to second that, but I'm going with Rice on this one. Is there additional discussion on the motion? Mr. Gearbaugh.
Just one quick question, and as I was reading through the MCL ordinance or whatever, the language, it indicated nonprofits, can they get temporary license to serve within this?
It's similar to like what we do for Oktoberfest.
Exactly, and that's what I'm
Yes.
going to say, so if that
Yeah.
benefit was, if Main Street wanted to do something like that, you would be able to?
I believe so. Our feelings on that is we do not want to have the social district active during Oktoberfest because we don't want the overlap of where people can take their beers and where they can bring alcohol. And it's just too many people. So I agree wholeheartedly on that. And then as far as anything else goes, I don't think we have any ideas or plans to sell alcohol. We'd prefer to leave that to the businesses to do.
Okay, just want to make sure, because I know organizations could do that, so I didn't know if they want to compete, so we want to make sure that's clear.
To clarify that, they're not defined as a qualified licensee, so it's a retailer that holds a license other than a special license to sell liquor, so, and yada, yada.
Yeah, it's something weird. It mentions nonprofits, so it was kind of odd when you look at it. So anyways, I'll defer to your
It mentioned, yeah, but in the, what is specifically a qualified licensee, a nonprofit would not be a qualified licensee
Thank you.
unless they held a liquor license for retail premises.
Okay, that's it for me.
Any additional comments or questions?
Yeah,
Councilmember Harmon.
I have an additional question. So does the decision to have a social district impact the study for the South Ann Arbor traffic?
Where it would.
No, I don't believe that it would.
So it wouldn't impact the outcome of the direction that we move in that?
No.
Additional comments or questions? Let me say this. I'll articulate it as plainly as I can, folks. And of course, hindsight is 2020. But I think realistically, at least I regret that we weren't able to move forward on a social district sometimes back, because I think the downtown, the merchants, and the overall community would have benefited from this initiative being implemented in either 2022 or 2023. I don't think this solution is perfect, and there are still a few unknowns floating out in the ether, but I think we can get clarification on some of those in very short order, and I'm of the opinion that we need to move forward here. A lot of people have invested a lot of time to try and broker a compromise. Again, it's not perfect, but it is what it is, and I think if utilized and embraced by downtown enterprises, it can be beneficial to their bottom line and to the broader downtown. As it relates to the enterprise on Michigan Ave, City Manager O'Toole and Community Development Director Harrington, I would like clarification from either legal or from regulatory agencies regarding how they could be included, if they could be included, and I would be very much amenable to moving expeditiously to modify this plan if there was a way to incorporate them. I don't see us struggling to oversee the inclusion of a north side enterprise from a maintenance perspective. I think that the vast majority of people who are going to be utilizing this service will do it responsibly. There are always outliers, but I think the vast majority will be responsible, and I think the proprietors and business owners want to be cautious and cognizant and responsible as well. So I will be voting in favor of this motion. Again, not perfect, but an important step in the right direction for our downtown and for our local enterprises. And yet again, if there's a way to modify this in the future to include additional enterprises, specifically those on the north side of US 12, I would be very much amenable to doing so. Thank you very much. Is there any additional discussion on the motion? We have a motion on the floor moved by Gearboss, seconded by Rice to approve. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. Ayes have it. The motion carries unanimously. Mary, thank you very much. Jill, appreciate your time this evening as well. We're going to move on, folks. We got some significant ground to cover yet this evening. We're going to transition to new business item 24-98, South Ann Arbor Street South Ann Arbor Street traffic. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the memo from City Manager O'Toole.
Move to acknowledge.
Moved by Gearba. Was that seconded by? Was that Lesh? Yes. Okay. Moved by Gearba, seconded by Lesh. City Manager O'Toole, I would defer to you, and I think you want to yield the floor to Chief Radzik.
That's correct. So at our last meeting, we had a discussion regarding South Ann Arbor Street traffic. Following that meeting, staff identified 3 possible alternatives that council could consider moving forward. I don't get the sense that there's much support for the first option, but it does exist, simply that we lift the existing restrictions by way of restricting or removing the existing traffic control order. The second option is retaining existing limits but with better signage. We've identified that this presents a challenge with enforcement since the city is compelled to enforce equitably. That means we would also have to prohibit vehicles such as school buses, refuse trucks, or even some of the city's own vehicles, because all of those uses are over the existing weight limit. The third option is the one recommended by staff. This option would analyze current conditions and seek a recommendation from a professional traffic engineer on the level of restrictions that are the most appropriate. This limit could be based on something like a vehicle classification or whether the vehicle is a pass-through vehicle or a local vehicle. But the reason that staff defers to this is simply because we as a city are not large enough to maintain our own full-time traffic engineer on staff, so we defer to our third-party consultants on this, TIA. They have indicated that they would be prepared and able to support us with this request. And 2, frankly, whatever solution we ultimately implement, we want to make sure that our city prosecutor has compelling enough documentation to support any actual enforcement efforts related to tickets that are then subsequently issued. And that is something that we are currently lacking with current enforcement protocols.
Very good.
Chief Radzik?
Chief Radzik, anything you'd like to add? Just make sure the microphone is still turned on. Yep, I believe it is. Well, okay, flip that bottom switch. And you can just leave it on, Chief.
I think it took a second. I think it's on now.
No, the only thing I wanted to add is I have been in touch with TIA. They have, I don't know if they've started the study, but it should be completed somewhere around June 14th. That's not end-all, be-all, but that was the date anticipated. And I think that we need to do our due diligence to complete the study, gather the facts and data, and then make an educated decision on where we go from there.
Very good. Well, we'll do a round robin, but I'll state my opinion. I've already discussed this with staff. I'm very much in favor of option 3, which is to do a deeper analysis in the interim period to maintain the status quo, which is the existing policy. If, according to Chief Radzik, it will take them approximately a little less than 30 days to complete the analysis, then council would be looking to revisit this at either our first meeting in July or second meeting in July, because the turnaround is too tight there between the 14th and our second meeting in June, which would be the 17th, noting, of course, that the agenda and support materials per policy are disseminated the Wednesday before. So again, I would be in favor of doing the study, maintaining the existing policy on South Ann Arbor Street, and having a thoughtful conversation on this issue in approximately a month's time. A little bit more than a month's time. I'm going to use the restroom. Mr. Gearbaugh, do you want to state your opinions or ask any questions of staff?
Yeah, thank you. As everyone knows, I brought this about, and because having been a resident on South Ann Arbor Street for 25 years and having known this was in place before even I was on a resident, when you look at it from the perspective of the other traffic enforcement, the one that was written back in 1972 about weightage, was it gross total weight, or was it weight per axle? And that's a confusion aspect, and I think this is where we run into our confusion is, what did we actually mean?
You are correct. When I reread that document, it said both things in two different places, which is, again, our concern is that there is a lack of clarity on what the existing limits are and why they were put in place.
Okay, and thank you, that's the clarification of that. And I want to assure everyone, my concern has always been, and I think this is one of the issue, when you look at York Township, this is more about through traffic than necessarily the weight. We know we have to have heavy trucks come through for deliveries within our community and for work and stuff like that, but it is not a pass-through. And if you look at the York Township map, they have pretty much said no truck through on every single road except Saline Milan Road. This is their problem. They're shifting it onto us. They did this in 2015. They wanted money to do that road, and they wanted us to lift this issue, and we said no. I support a study because we have to do that, but I want it to be clear that we have the right to do a no-through traffic, and we have other concerns within our community. I agree with that, but this has been in place. And the other issue is, the other side of enforcement is the 25 mile an hour. I've had 3 accidents in front of my home. I've had my truck totaled while I was out in the street. There's been an injury in front of mine when somebody ran off of it. That street, at that hill, people coming in and going out is a danger. And unfortunately, I've witnessed this, and as so have many of my other residents in the neighborhood. We know this isn't the only concern in Saline, but I have evidence of those accidents actually happening there. My neighbors know I've been out there doing all kinds of things, yelling and swearing at trucks as they go by because of that situation. But for me, I agree. We have made this issue our downtown districts, our historic districts. We know damage has been done on all our buildings downtown because of the truck traffic on Michigan Avenue, and we can't control that, but we can control this. So for me, moving forward, I'm getting on a soapbox here, but we've got precedent. This is not our problem. This is York Township's problem. The county, in fact, has even made designations of their roads where they want it. It's unfortunate, but I don't want to be solving the problems for a growing township when we have our own issues here, and this is not a solution that we have to come up with for York Township.
Councilmember Rice, any questions? And if you'd state your preference in regards to the 3 options that were articulated in the city manager's memo?
So first of all, my preference is absolutely to do a study. I can't make a decision without knowing all the information. I feel like there's lots of information out here that we need to follow up on. But with that is the caveat that why are we only doing this for South Ann Arbor Street? North Ann Arbor Street is a historic district. I live on North Ann Arbor Street. I live at the bottom of 2 hills. Clunk, clunk every day, gravel trucks whipping by, kids trying to cross the street to get to Henny Park. Same exact issues all the way up to Liberty, lots of kids crossing the street. Same exact issues there. I want it done on both, north and south, because if it's an issue on south, it's an issue on north. I understand the delivery aspects of needing to get things downtown. We can come up with some alternative routes for our deliveries, some special zoning where they can park, things like that. We can solve that problem. I agree with my colleague, Mr. Gearbach. I've been studying this map for days now, and I am concerned that York Township has pushed everybody towards Saline and Saline Township. And I don't understand, I do understand the Moon Road issue. We heard from the business owner that roundabout is like a non-issue. You can't even get through the roundabout. But I don't understand some of the other road issues and why York Township has pushed everything towards Saline. So that's my 2 cents there. I completely side with everyone who says this is an issue. Again, I sit on North Ann Arbor Street. We don't sit on our front porch, and we've been doing, ironically, we've been putting a concrete driveway in this week, and we've had a hard time even hearing our contractors over the noise, and they've been shocked at the amount of traffic, the speed of traffic. They've been really nervous during doing some of their work. They had to do some curb work today. They were really nervous during doing the curb work. I emailed the police chief and the deputy police chief and kind of gave them a heads up that there might be some traffic issues. So it is a problem citywide. I'm advocating, please do a study for North and South.
So if I may, I will note, and I don't purport to be an expert on the topic of federal aid eligibility, but we have, it has been our understanding that because federal aid dollars have been used on North Ann Arbor, and we are proposing to use federal aid dollars on North Ann Arbor in the future. There are certain caveats that come with the use of that, and that is availability of truck traffic on it.
And I understand that as well. I think I would like to see those numbers up next to each other.
Yep.
If this, then this. And I think that's the only way I can make a decision about this, is to see all the scenarios.
Very good. Thank you for that. Councilmember Harmont, any questions or your preference in regards to the three recommendations outlined in the memo?
Yeah, number 3, obviously, there's a lot more that needs to be discussed on this topic, and obviously, there's business owners that are impacted by the roundabout that shifted their route, that it's impacted their business. So I think that we need to be making decisions based on facts and get the emotions out of the way. So, thank you.
Very good. Councilmember Lesh?
I concur with my colleagues. I think Councilmember Gearbaugh stated it very well.
Councilmember Seal?
I favor actually option number 2, retaining existing restrictions but with improved signage. This has been a long-standing problem, this whole question of truck routes down on the South Ann Arbor Street section of roadway within the city, dating back to when I served down the Saline Police Department. And another thing that's always been a bugaboo for anybody who sits in the police department is speed enforcement, anywhere in the city. I think that it's something that perhaps should be a little more visible, maybe in that particular area. But I favor option number 2.
Very good. That was clear. Mayor Pro Tem Dillon?
Thank you. I guess there's a lot of pieces, and I appreciate what Mr. CEO just said, because that's sort of where I understand what people want with a study. I will tell you, be careful what you wish for. Ask anybody that decided that traffic was moving too fast on the west side of town, and they did a speed study, and the speed said, you know what, we're actually going to raise the speed limit. So just be careful about that. Yes, obviously, good information can come from it, but we can also set our own guidelines in our community, too, and understanding what we want. I'd like to understand, where did the trucks go when South Ann Arbor Street was closed? What route did they use then? Because there were not cement trucks going down Henry Street. So they went somewhere, and what route was that? And, you know, I want to understand. I mean, I feel like we need to have a roundtable discussion that involves the county and that involves the townships, and understand, because as the owner of the trucking company mentioned, he can't use Bemis because of the roundabout. Well, that's a Washtenaw County Road Commission issue, that how they built that roundabout, and maybe they need to adjust it so that truck traffic can deal with that. So I really want to make sure that this isn't just an us problem, that it's an everybody at the table issue. So that's one of my big things right now. I will say right now, listening to public comment and listening to somebody say, where are the police? Traffic is going so fast. Things are aggressive and hostile. We need help with speeders. That right there sends me a very clear sign that we definitely need police enforcement there. It's not about the wait at this 5 minutes. It's about the speed of that traffic. And I know that Mr. Gearbaugh has talked about that for a very long time also. So I think I'd like to see that as a stepping stone and see what we can do there and see if that helps it. And then, to be honest, a little bit further down in the agenda, we're going to be talking about pavement markings. I think South Ann Arbor Street is ripe for pavement markings. Markings that either delineate, the road looks to be smaller, that have sort of false speed bumps on them, whatever it is for traffic calming, and see if those things help for it. I think there's a lot of things that we may be able to do and just reassess. I mean, I'm not sure where the whole 10,000 pounds comes about, because if you were to look at classification, I mean, that's a full-size pickup truck. That's it. So it's sort of this, I don't know whether that was an arbitrary number or whether the bridge was held together with matchsticks and duct tape, but I'm not really sure. So, I mean, obviously, looking at what does the city feel comfortable with as a weight? You know, we know that the buses need to get through there, but as we've talked about, those buses are only going through there twice a day versus bigger truck traffic. I mean, truck traffic's a big issue right now. It's a big issue on the west side of town also that we're not talking about. Austin Road has become a prime truck route. So I think there's a lot to be done here. And so, I mean, I see a value in number 2 and in number 3. Obviously, the majority seems to want to have a traffic study done. Like I said, I'm not going to oppose that. I just want people to be aware of what those results might look like. But in the meantime, I absolutely think that we just need more of a police presence in that area.
Very good, thank you. City Manager O'Toole, Police Chief Radzik, I believe we have consensus, which is I have 3 things. A desire for additional police enforcement in and around the South Ann Arbor Street corridor, a preference towards option 3, with several leaning towards maintaining the existing restrictions in perpetuity. As Chief Radzik said, the report from TIA should be complete by that 3rd Friday in June? Which means we would likely be discussing it. I guess I would rely on your judgment there, City Manager O'Toole. Would you like to aim for the first meeting in July or the second meeting in July?
I will be on vacation the second meeting in July, so I'm trying to force as much to that first meeting as possible.
If you think staff can do an evaluation and have some recommendation or have a recommendation or a series of recommendations for us then by, I believe it's July the 1st, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Then I think we can shoot for that. You amenable to that? Hold on just one second. You amenable to that, City Manager O'Toole?
Yes.
Okay. And everyone in the audience is clear then on what the expectations are going to be moving forward? So the existing restrictions will be maintained for this next month and a half, with City Council revisiting the issue at our first regular meeting in July, which is July the 1st, here in Council Chambers at 7 p.m. And of course, you can always follow our meetings and sign up for updates and review the agenda and support materials by going on to Documents on Demand, Minutes on Demand, and requesting updates. And if you have any questions about that, the city clerk's office would be happy to walk you through the system. It's very good. I highly recommend it for anybody who's interested in issues, policy issues that are debated or discussed by City Council. Mr. Gearbaugh, you had an item?
Just to clarify that we can continue to enforce what we currently have, or do we need a new moratorium on trucks on that road?
We can still enforce what we have.
Thank you.
Very good. We do have a motion on the floor moved by Gearbaugh, seconded by Les, simply to acknowledge receipt of the memo. We did develop consensus on this issue, so no subsequent vote will be necessary at this time. All those in favor of acknowledging receipt signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. And motion carries. Thank you, Chief Radzik. We're going to move on to our last 4 action items this evening. 2499, pavement and lane marking. This is pretty self-explanatory. Motion to approve or not to approve the Saline Department of Public Works to utilize the Washtenaw County Road Commission contract for paving markings in an amount not to exceed $50,000 annually.
Move to approve.
Moved by Gearbaugh to approve. I'll let CO be the second. City Manager O'Toole, in the absence of Public Works Director Searles, am I deferring to City Engineer Humphreys?
I'm happy to cover this. It's a pretty straightforward topic. We get better pricing by partnering with Washtenaw County on striping. I will answer to Mayor Pro Tem Dillon's point. If we wanted to do an alternative striping pattern for something like South Ann Arbor Street, I'd recommend that we ask one of our consultant engineers to come up with a plan for what that could look like and then price it out separately. But this is largely for existing lanes, touching up areas that are necessary.
Very good. City Engineer Humphreys, anything you'd like to add to that?
Nope, I think that's good.
Okay, questions for the City Manager? Mayor Pro Tem Dillon and then Mr. Gearbaugh.
Thank you. Just to clarify, so is this a multi-year contract? Because it says $50,000 annually.
Correct. They have a multi-year contract now. So we're basically piggybacking onto Washtenaw County's existing bid.
Okay.
And the 50,000 is what is my understanding is in the budget annually. So it matches up with what we budget annually for payment markings.
Okay. And do we have any idea of like what that, how long would it take us to get the entire city done?
Well, if we ultimately switch, which we're considering switching, so we currently do waterborne pavement markings, or historically have done waterborne pavement markings. Those don't last as long as the thermoplastic pavement markings. There's different types of markings. There's long line pavement markings or special pavement markings. So we're recommending that we get the better, longer lasting thermoplastic at the cheaper price of the road commissions. And to answer that question, with that, about 4 years, every single pavement marking will be updated to thermoplastic in 4 or 5 years, and that will last a lot longer than what you're currently used to seeing, because we have the waterborne, which does fade each season, and the thermoplastic has a longer life associated with it. That was my quickest answer to that question.
I appreciate that, because my next question was going to be, if you look at our parking lot, which the striping is less than 2 years old, 99% of the striping is gone already. So is that, it was painted at the wrong season? Was it used with an inferior product?
And it's very common that waterborne is used, and so historically that, my understanding, and Director Searles would have better information than this on me, but my understanding is historically we've used just waterborne. So we're looking to use the thermoplastic in this contract with the road, but we're getting substantially cheaper prices on all of the units because we're going with this countywide contract as opposed to doing it ourselves. Plus we save on engineering and overhead costs too this way.
That's fantastic. I appreciate it. Obviously, using the economies of scale is always in the best interest of the city. I just want to make sure that we're getting a good product, because I know that the last time we partnered, I believe, with the county on this, we ended up with East Henry Street with some really bizarre striping that had to be ground out and redone.
To be fair, that wasn't necessarily, that wasn't the county, that was the consultant that made the recommendation on the, yeah.
Yeah, we paid a lot of, this is much better plan.
Yeah.
Good to know. Thank you very much.
Mr. Gearba, I believe you had a quick question?
Just, how are you moving this through the city? Because there's locations where stop lines haven't been painted for over a decade. And are you doing it as quadrants? Have you identified heavier traffic roads, or what are we doing?
Well, right, I guess I will have to defer for a follow-up to a plan on exactly the areas that we are doing. I know that we took the quantities from historic and split it up into quadrants, but I couldn't exactly tell you how the.
One of my concerns is Henry and South and North Ann Arbor. There's supposed to be a stop line there and barely there at all.
And the stop bars are one of the more expensive items because it's
thicker,
it's wider.
Wider, yep.
And especially with the thermoplastic, so that is one that we were looking at doing like a quarter of them over the next 4 years. But we could, I think, follow up with some specific locations if you're bug flying.
I think that would be helpful, and if you could have Director Searles communicate that to the city manager, and she could disseminate it through her, we can communicate.
Yeah, and I think that my understanding, the intent of tonight was to get our annual budget lined up with the county, starting to move with the county, then we're going to work with the county to define the areas. They do have a contract now, like Colleen indicated that they've bid out, they have these good prices, so that was the intent of tonight, is to line up our budgets and move forward with the county, which is kind of the new, so.
But if there's options or we needed to give more funding, I'm more than willing to do that, because it's clear at some intersections, people are just going right into the intersection and not even stopping behind the line.
Thank you, Mr. Gearba. Any additional questions or comments? We have a motion on the floor. Thank you, Tesha, and thank you, City Manager O'Toole. We have a motion on the floor moved by Gearba, seconded by CO to approve. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Moving on to new business item 24-100, 2024-2025 local road resurfacing contract. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the memo from City Engineer Humphreys and to award or not to award the 2024-2025 local road resurfacing contract to Cadillac Asphalt in the amount of $2,911,800 and to authorize, not authorize the mayor to execute the necessary documents.
Move to acknowledge, approve, and authorize.
Moved by CO to acknowledge, award, and authorize, Mr. CO?
Yes.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Rice. Engineer Humphreys, would you like to make some comments for the public record?
I would. So this is our 2024 local road resurfacing program. So I think I've been here a couple times over the last 6 months or so talking about transportation asset management, the difference between major and local roads. Local roads, we just get a lot less funding per mile for. If you look at the state of our local roads, they have deteriorated at a greater rate than our major roads, which we have more funding sources for. As part of our transportation asset management plan, we are very excited to implement the right fix at the right time and touching a lot more miles of local roads than we have in past years. This is the first product of our transportation asset management plan. And we have some really good news. It's for 2 seasons, so for 24 and 25, we have some really good asphalt prices. We got 4 bids. We're bidding it a little later in the season, but we still got 4 really competitive bids, and then Cadillac came in and was even, you can see by our bid prices, came in even lower. So we have some fantastic prices that are good through the end of next construction season, which allows for budgeting and looking forward for us to just really plan, and finance loves it, right? We've got some exact numbers for next season now, too. And lastly, we have a little bit extra money this season, so we are looking to, after this is awarded, coming back with a change order to extend, to maybe increase the scope and do some additional areas. So overall, just really some great news on our local roads. We're still working with Cadillac to finalize some of the scheduling. We had a really, really tight schedule in here. We were working with the schools and trying to get everything done before August 17th. Due to the late bid in the season and just limited resources out there, that schedule cannot be made for 2024. So we're going to be working with a contractor to adjust that and maybe extending more into the fall or coming back earliest first thing spring. But the good news for us for budgeting and everything, like I say, we got some good prices, and we're going to get a lot of work done over these next 2 seasons.
Yeah, this is great news. I'm really excited, and I'm actually looking forward to the change order because, like you said, we're going to be able to do some significant work here on our local roads that, in a number of cases, are in desperate need of some attention. And I think it's great that we're able to lock into a price until the end of the subsequent construction season. So excellent work here. Are there questions for the city engineer? Mayor Pro Tem Dillon?
So just very quickly, when you look at the Wildwood subdivision, Rosebud is one of the streets in there didn't we just do that when the road collapsed?
Rosebud, we had the storm sewer collapsed in 2021, I believe was and my understanding there was some small repair work at the actual storm sewer. So it was a culvert that my understanding is quite deep there that, or not culvert, storm sewer below the road that actually failed and caused the road to collapse. So I'm certain a portion of the road was rebuilt there, but this is actually to do an overall treatment service on the entire neighborhood of Wildwood. And in fact, that's one of the, Wildwood is, and as quite a few roads we're hitting, are roads that were built 20, 25 years ago, have good base, aren't completely falling apart, and we're doing this just a treatment on top of it to prolong its life by about 10 years or so. So it's really a surface treatment that's getting done on that. Anything that would have been done with that culvert would have been, I'm sure we were digging down, replace base, replace the road up to just where the culvert was broken.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, Engineer Humphreys, it was a small section, a relatively small section of patching that would have been done close to the actual work, and I believe that was near the intersection of Rosebud and Wildwood Trail.
Yes. And that patch would have left 2 more joints in the pavement, which this surfacing will help to treat. So every time you cut into a pavement, you're creating a new joint. Water is the death of pavement, right? You don't want water to get under the pavement. So any time you cut into a pavement, you're decreasing the life of that pavement.
And just to clarify, so we are not doing actually any of these asphalt projects this calendar year? These are all for '25?
We have quite a few partial depth and mill and fills, or full depth resurfacing. So all of the courts that are located like off of Pleasant Ridge, off of down of Pleasant Ridge and why am I drawing?
Old Creek.
Old Creek, thank you. There's quite a few creeks, courts off of those that are getting the partial depth. Lighthouser is getting a full depth. The back end of Arboretum is getting a full depth. So those are the treatments that are still moving forward this season, plus whatever our change order is, which is to be determined. And we're going to be talking with the contractor about when the microsurfacing and cape sealing can be done, if that's something that's a fall 24 or spring 25 project. And that does take the majority of the larger subs, Wildwood, Tortwood, Saline River Drive.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Any additional questions or comments, Mr. Gearbaugh?
Just real quick, both of these processes that you're doing, what kind of, how shall I say it, concern or issue will homeowners and residents have driving their cars over that in terms of anything being on, like when you go over chip and seal, you're potentially kicking up rocks and tar and all that stuff. So what we're doing, is it a quick drying span?
It's got an
or-
additional step into it, so from what you would typically seal with a chip seal that, like if you're driving on like a road. So there are different applications for different roads. So I think all of us are used to driving on the road commission roads and seeing when just a chip seal is done without that additional layer on top of it, so you are left with the aggregate. And that is not the intent of this. This isn't going to be like a smooth, flat, but it will improve the surface of, like for instance, Wildwood, it'll fill in the cracks. It will make it it is not the same as just a chip seal without the.
Okay, so there won't be any rocks or anything like that? It's just going to be the seal like we do with the crack seal?
I mean, it will be disruptive, but for a very short period of time for the homeowners, because everyone's got to get out of their drive. I mean, that's the real, but it's so much less disruptive than a true reconstruct, where everyone has to get out for the gravel to be put down. Everyone has
That's
to get
fine,
out
it's
for the
just making
concrete.
sure we do that communication
Yeah,
for that.
yeah.
Thank you.
Any additional questions or comments? There a motion on the floor moved by CO, seconded by Rice, to acknowledge, to award, and to authorize. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Moving right along, new business item 24-101, construction engineering contract. This will be a motion to acknowledge receive the memo from City Engineer Humphreys and to approve or not to approve the proposal from OHM for construction engineering services for the 2024-2025 local road resurfacing project in an amount not to exceed $560,000.
Move to approve and to acknowledge.
We'll start with acknowledge, second approve. Moved by Gearbaugh to acknowledge and to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Dillon. Some brief comments, City Engineer Humphreys?
Yes, thank you. This is for 2 construction seasons and includes just a little bit of help with redesign also, so that's why it's just a tad more than your typical 15%. But I think OHM has done a great job with us. They did a great job on finishing our last year's project and did design on this, so.
Beautiful. Questions for the City Engineer? Mr. Seal?
How's our experience been with OHM?
So our last year's, the largest project that we've done in quite a while as far as a capital job was the East Belt Sewer Project, and that was a $6.5 million capital job. That was originally slated for 2 constructions that we were able to successfully complete in 1, and I think that a large part is due to OHM's construction team. I was very pleased with the boots, on the ground at the daily. We have an experienced team here in their Ann Arbor office, and their construction manager did just a great job of working with the contractor. I think that's key to success of a project is working well with the contractor, because so many things, especially in underground work. That was underground work. So this is actually should be more straightforward. It's just street work. There's less unknowns that should pop up.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Seal. Any additional questions? Any discussion on the motion? It's been properly moved by Gearbaugh, seconded by Dillon to acknowledge and to approve. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Last action item is 24-103, Water Affordability Study. This will be a motion to acknowledge receive the memo from City Engineer Humphreys and to approve or not to approve the contract with OHM for water affordability and planning grant study in the amount not to exceed $81,000.
Move to acknowledge and approve.
Moved by Lesh to acknowledge and to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Gearbaugh. I'll get you on the next one, Mr. CO. City Engineer Humphreys, do you care to make some brief statements for the public's benefit?
I will. I'm pleased to announce that we received $81,000 from the state of Michigan in a grant with no match to look at reliability improvements to our water system. As we all know, our source of water is a well, and we have an RO plant that has reached 20 years of life, and we've had some difficulties just due to its life in the treatment process. So I think that this is great that the state of Michigan is allowing us to look at the feasibility of an alternate source, which is connecting to Ypsilanti community utilities services, and they serve Pittsfield Township, which is directly adjacent to us, and the intent of the study is just to see what it would cost and if it is feasible. I think the potential benefit to the city would be more reliable and increased quality of source of water. So that's what we're going to look at.
Very good. And for the members of the public, residents or members of the business community who are interested in the turnaround, when do we expect to have data that we could analyze and review?
So the grant itself has to be used by I believe it's the end of our next fiscal year, 25. We're concurrently doing this with our water master plan study, which will help us really identify the needs of our water treatment plant, of our distribution system, which will be able to help line up nicely with the feasibility of an additional source or an alternate source. So we're expecting to have the water master plan done by the end of this calendar year, adding this onto it now. That's why I'm saying kind of the end of the next fiscal year. So about a year from now.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
Questions for the city engineer? Councilmember Rice, then Mr. Seal.
This might just be too much information for me. So, is within this study the cost to connect going to be put in here? Because this is like, what I'm reading is more like the cost to operate and what the situation is, but like the cost to connect built in there as well?
Yes. The intent is to include the cost, the physical, to do the engineering side,
Okay.
and to start the political discussion. So there's two costs to connect, right? There's physically what and what grade line can we physically get the water from A to B? What is the demand condition? All of that. This study will absolutely cover that. The study also intends to cover the initial discussions with the neighboring communities, but that's the second part of that I can't guarantee that question will be answered.
Sure. And when all of this information is presented to us, possibly first or second quarter of the next fiscal year, will we also have side by side a look at full city operations, future of what city operations would look like? Should we keep it here? Are we going to have something to compare this to, much like we will when we eventually get all of the dam feasibility studies back?
Yeah, and that's absolutely the intent, because what we had already undertaken, which is the master plan, master study of our water system as exists. So we know we have some improvements needed at the water treatment plant. So to really take a deep dive into all of those to compare what that is to what this potential could be, and that is the exact intent of this study.
Perfect. I commend that those are happening simultaneously, and great job getting this grant so that it doesn't have to come out of city money. That's all.
Thank you. Mr. Seal?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. Is it not true that Yucca provides water to Pittsfield Township too?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's what. So Pittsfield is, our direct neighbor. So we would, it would be a lot cheaper for us to get it from Pittsfield, obviously, because then we have to pipe it from Yucca. But then we need to negotiate with both Pittsfield and Yucca. Yeah.
So the difference here is the connection point?
Yeah. So this intent of the study is to evaluate just that, connecting to Yucca in Pittsfield.
Okay. So Yucca would take a different route than a connection through Pittsfield to Yucca?
The intent of this study is to evaluate connecting in Pittsfield Township to Yucca water, because Yucca serves Pittsfield Township.
Okay.
And also, we would look at the connection point bypassing Pittsfield and going directly to Yucca, but my guess is that'll be a quick analysis. It'll be cheaper to use the existing piping as such that Pittsfield's already built to buy into their infrastructure, to bring it. Sure. There's a very large ground storage tank at the Textile and State. That's Pittsfield Township. That's Yucca water right there. So
And ultimately, doesn't Yucca get their water from the city of Detroit?
They do. Yes,
Okay.
you're right. It's DW, it's Detroit Water, I'm sorry, now it's Great Lakes Water.
Water Authority.
To YCUA, to Pittsfield, we would be, yes.
Okay, thank
That's
you.
exactly true.
Mr. Gerbo, did you have a question?
That was the confirmation, but we're not considering any other, like Ann Arbor or Scioto Township that produce water?
No, no, the proximity of the connection points makes, this really is truly within 2 miles of our water, like the two systems are very close together.
Okay. No, and one of the issues, I'm not so sure we'd want Ann Arbor water, so I just wanted to make sure that wasn't part of it. Thank you.
Any additional questions? Mayor Pro Tem Dillon?
Thank you. Just for clarification, the city of Saline water is safe and plentiful, correct?
Yes, it's just.
I just don't want to send a mixed message out there that we're looking for a different water source.
Good point. But it is groundwater that is high mineral content groundwater. It causes discoloration. Anybody can go drive on Old Creek and see where we dewatered last year for 2 months and see it's still discolored from the groundwater. That's the same water that we are pumping out to all of our residents. So it is a absolutely safe drinking water. Anybody who has a well outside the city of Saline knows exactly what we're talking about. It's a high mineral content groundwater source of water. this alternate source would be a surface water source, like we just described, Great Lakes to YCUA to Pittsfield.
Right. And so I appreciate that we have a grant and we're looking at options. I am concerned about the fact that 4 years ago, when we were looking at our wastewater treatment, we did look at Yucca for wastewater, and we decided that, no, we were not going in that route because we wanted to sort of be in control of our own destiny. And once you turn it over, then you're subject to whatever fees they want to charge you, whatever they want to add to that, to that pile. So I want to be very mindful of that also, and that some of the issues that we are having with our water currently are, to be blunt, at our own hand. The green sand filters, the flushing, these were things that we weren't necessarily on top of for a while. Now that we have started to rectify those, we will see better clarity with our water. I mean, that's the assumption that we were told. That's the assumption that I'm going with. Is that correct?
Is the question that, have we done improvements recently to our water system to improve the quality of water? Absolutely. I think new staff has taken on a lot of preventative maintenance, like you said, had been kicked down the road for years. So I think that new staff taking on some of that preventative maintenance is exactly what exacerbated the problem, but then has ultimately made the problem better. So I'm not sure what the question you asked me was. But we still have the source of water is still a high mineral content groundwater source. We're drawing from some aquifer that is, it's just, that's the source of water that we have. That's the source of water that's causing tuberculation in our pipes. That's still our source of water. It's a safe source of water, absolutely. It just takes additional treatment to remove that. And right now, we're limited by our RO treatment process. So part of our master plan will be looking at exactly what long-term is the best plan for that water treatment. Is our current treatment process the best long-term for our source of water?
Thank you very much.
Final comment or question before we vote on the motion?
No, I was just going to say, the issue that you're doing is making a cost-benefit ratio analysis, but also the idea that, we are heavily dependent on one heavy water user in our community. Should that decrease, the ability to spread that cost may not be attainable, and so we need to look at other things like Yucca or other things, because as we go further into the future, regionalism is here, and if we want to make sure that we can afford per capita, that may be an opportunity. I want to keep our water. I think we have good water, but the cost to treat it and to do all these other aspects may at some point have to be the realization. It's just like every other community is facing. So thank you for doing this study.
Yep, thank you.
Yeah, and I also just want to appreciate the looking into the future. I think that's something that we've perhaps lacked over the last couple of decades. And so, all of these studies and all of these plans are just that. They're plans. They're looking into the future. I think Mr. Gearbaugh put it a perfect way. This is cost benefit, right? There's not a problem, but what are we looking at in the future? Are we going to just keep having to replace parts because they're getting corroded, things like that. So I look for these types of opportunities. I'm really glad that you all look for these as well, so that we can just kind of have the full picture, the most information we can have. So thanks for that.
Very good, thank you. Any subsequent discussion on the motion? It's been properly moved by Lesh, seconded by Gearbaugh to acknowledge and to approve. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Engineer Humphreys. We're going to transition to the final portion of our agenda, which is reports and other announcements, including committee and commission updates. Again, I'm going to start to my left and then to my right. Councilmember Gearbaugh.
Tonight was the initial meeting of the Finance Committee. We've met with Treasurer Cole and decided to move forward on some items. We'll be probably meeting once a month to address concerns, financial policies and concerns like that. The wastewater treatment task force met last week. We were talking about some of the concerns, and maybe city manager may want to chime in on here. We do know that we have a bit of a delay related to the removal of soil and the disposal of it to whichever landfill is going to be taking it. So that has put a bit of a hold on the construction at this point, but they are working around that until that can be resolved. Other than that, I believe the project is moving forward as planned and coordinated.
Correct, yeah, we just have a little bit of a delay with hauling of soils.
And as I sent out to everyone, you all have access to that report, but if you have any questions, please let me know, or suggestions for changes on it. we try to keep that up to date, or at least Bill does at the wastewater treatment plant, to make sure that it provides what's on and off. We also had an issue last week, if anybody want to know, again, with the flare gas that's been fixed. Apparently that was out of whack. We may have had some odor from that. And then other than that, Tifa and EDC met last Monday to discuss the budget and moving forward with that.
Very good. Councilmember Rice, reports, announcements, or commission committee updates?
Parks meets tomorrow. I want to encourage all of our community members. I get a lot of comments about what the park should do. Join us for a meeting, 7 p.m. right in here, third Tuesday of the month. So see you tomorrow. It is also, this is the last meeting before Pride Month, so I want to announce a couple of our Pride activities throughout the city of Saline. First being on June the 1st, the city of Saline will be hosting our Pride flag raising ceremony at 1 p.m. here at City Hall. We're going to have quite a few speakers and lots of community members here to join us for that. And then our friends over at Saline Supports are hosting a picnic on June the 30th at Mill Pond Park. So great venue. It has moved to a bigger space so that we can spread out a little bit. Lots of great activities. That will be at 12:30, from 12:30 to 2:30. So there will be fun and activities and food. So please join us for that as well. And that's all I've got.
Very good. Councilmember Harmount, reports, announcements, commission committee updates?
I don't. I'll let, we've met on the Environmental Commission, but I'll let Councilperson Seo report on that.
Very good. Councilmember Lesh?
Policy Subcommittee met for the first time today, and we are going to be meeting again as the Finance tentatively once a month for the foreseeable future. And the Arts and Culture Committee met, and we've discussed Bixby Collection. We discussed Jazz in the Park is making good progress on getting their funding in order, and art around Saline has been ordered.
Excellent. Councilmember Seo, reports, announcements, commission committee updates?
Yes, sir. Last week, the Environmental Commission met, as Councilwoman Harmount reported. We discussed a number of things. We did kind of an after-action assessment of what we'd done for the trying to think.
Earth Month?
Yes. Thank you. And that we determined that we needed to start planning earlier, much earlier next year, or the end of this year or next year, to make better use of our time and get things lined up better. We're also looking at maybe trying to schedule some kind of a hazardous, or not hazardous waste, but a disposal program here at City Hall. We have to look into that as yet. And then we're looking at trying to get volunteers to come to our table at the
Farmers Market.
Yeah, Farmers Market. Thank you. My brain is not working well tonight. And I've forgotten the actual dates, but I think it's not every month.
I have them.
The year.
So it's July 20th, August 3rd, September 14th.
Very good.
And then we have a date out in October as well.
Right. And that's it.
Very good. Mayor Pro Tem Dillon, commission committee reports or other announcements?
No, it's actually an off week for me, and the only announcement I was going to make is on the parade, so I'll just plant the seed because I assume that the mayor will take the lead on that.
Yeah, so Memorial Day Parade is a week from today. We strongly encourage your attendance and participation. I think it's one of our most outstanding community events, in large part because we're honoring our fallen heroes. Step off for the parade will actually be one block to the east because of the water main lining project on Harris Street. So staging will be in the City Hall parking lot behind the police department and on Davenport Street. Of course, the parade runs essentially Speedway at Michigan Ave and Harris to Oakwood Cemetery, with a program beginning at Oakwood Cemetery about 10:30, maybe 10:45 at the very latest. And then I believe there will be refreshments at the Legion following our program at Oakwood Cemetery. I inquired on this item before to the city manager, and I believe it was also discussed at the Oakwood Cemetery Committee. Will there be some sort of tents, or cover provided to attendees next Monday who observe and or participate in the program at Oakwood Cemetery?
Yes, Director Strolls has indicated that he will have those tents.
Very good. Okay, excellent. Anything else you wanted to share on the commission
No,
committee?
that's it. Thank
Okay.
you.
Anything else for the good of the order this evening? Then we're going to transition to the second public comment period, my friends. Under the Open Meetings Act, any citizen may come forward at this time, make comment or question to City Council. This public comment period will also be limited to 3 minutes per person. Anyone who would like to speak is requested, but of course not required to state his or her name and address for the record. Are there any citizen comments?
And I was just saying, when I can't remember what you said about an open table discussion, I was wondering if that would be something that I could be involved in with. You know, it's not like I'm here trying to do the right thing. I mean, I was the one that brought up to the attention to the DPW about the wrong signage. You know, I have not been using the road. And, you know, I'm a third generation family business.
If we do have a larger discussion with some of our neighboring municipalities and the road commission, we will certainly be sure to include you.
Because, I mean, it's not really York Township's problem. This is my problem. That's why I'm here. It ain't York Township's problem. This is my problem. It's my family's problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional citizen comments?
I'm still Mary Hess. I was wondering, as far as the dam, it rained pretty hard last night. Are our radical gates working?
Yes.
And are we lifting the gates?
When required, yeah.
Because I know we have to
They lifted
contact
them
the
at the last
state, I
heavy
think.
flood. Yep.
I'm sorry.
They lifted them at the last heavy flood that we had a couple weeks ago, or a month ago.
I think it's important that they work.
Any additional citizen comments? You'll have 3 minutes, please.
She said something about 2 licenses on the one side of the north side. I have a main license and I have an additional bar license for 2 buildings in that bar. So, which I pay extra for, because I have 2 functioning bars in 2 different buildings. So, does that qualify?
I'd be happy to ask legal. It's not
Yeah.
something I would know.
Let's double back with you on that. It's good point, though, Dan.
So that's.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for finding that.
Yep.
Yeah.
You'll send that to legal counsel, and I believe I shared Mr. Colander's contact information with you
Yes.
last week, so you
Yes.
should be able to follow up. Excellent. Thank you, Dan.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ron Schofield. I'm with Salt Springs and a new resident of Saline, 50 Steiner Court.
Oh, nice.
So now you're all in trouble. I'd like, I guess following up on what Dan said, I think that it's, the letter, Councilman Dillon, was not necessarily to just draw a line in the sand. It was just to demonstrate that we want the city to find a way to include everybody. The north-south thing that's been going on, I guess, forever, we're trying to bridge that. And we think that if Dan, he can provide a means of doing that, that we should follow up on it, because there's really no reason to exclude what he's doing. You cannot drink alcohol crossing Michigan Avenue, but you can certainly carry it. So, there are a lot, the MLCC reads a lot like programming your VCR, which none of us ever really did. So things can be interpreted different ways. I think it's important to find out exactly what the rules are, because we have information that says, yes, we can cross Michigan Avenue and Dan's could come on board. If it takes a dual license to do so, then maybe that makes everybody's job easier. But doing the south side only and then trying to get the north side involved just seems like not a waste of time, but just the baby steps. So if we can just get absolute answers and get this thing implemented, it would be terrific. $320 was talked about as not much money. As businesses, we get hit from all different directions. $320 is a lot of money when you look at how are you going to get that money back. So I don't think that this is going to be something that's going to explode with people falling all over the street with drinks in their hands. It's just an opportunity for people to enjoy a beverage while they're in town, explore more of the city, and bring us more in line with cities like Northville, Chelsea, things like that. But I understand the devil's in the details. But we'd like to see it happen. I'd like to follow up with a letter that I believe was sent to the city from a disgruntled visitor to Salt Springs, that they were not able to access a handicap parking spot on Henry Street near our ramp. that they had to, they had apparently somebody that had a great deal of difficulty, parking in one spot and coming all the way around. We put a curb cut in specifically for our ramp. We would like to see the city, and it's been talked about over the years, designate a handicap spot either north, east, or west of our curb cut as a permanent accessible spot. So that's it.
I think we can definitely follow up with you on that. I did not receive a letter, or was not privy to a letter. Did you receive a letter from an individual complaining
Yes.
about? Okay, all right.
It was sent to us, but addressed to the city, so I assumed it came to somebody's.
Yes, we got I believe it was mailed, like a physical.
Okay.
letter.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate it, Ron. Thank you.
Good. Whoops. I'll do it rock star style, like Janet says. I just want to make a quick comment. Saline Main Street, and as a downtown business owner, I did do the due diligence. I reached out to every business and property owner in the downtown area, with the exception of 3 who have not gotten back to me. Every single business on both north and south are in favor of the social district to bring people into town. And when I asked them that question, I didn't indicate that it was only going to be on south. It was on north and south was when I started that email question. So I just wanted to let everybody know that we did reach out to everybody in the downtown area, and everybody was in favor of it except for the 3 that I just haven't had a chance to circle back with.
We appreciate your efforts, and, to Ron's point, I do applaud the businesses for trying to develop more cohesion and unity, regardless of where you exist geographically within our downtown. I think that bodes well for the future if we're all on the same page and we're all committed to one another's success. I think that's phenomenal. Thank you for that. One last opportunity for citizen comments. You got a couple minutes left, yeah. Behind Merchant, yeah, okay, yep. Yep. I'll follow up, for sure. Clerk Royal, did we receive any written communiques in advance of tonight's meeting in which the individual wanted their remarks read at this time? Easy enough. Then is there a motion to adjourn our regular meeting at 9:26?
Move to
Adjourn?
yeah.
Okay, moved by Harmont. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Lesh. All those in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.